Yeah, it's funny because I haven't seen SNL in a while, but I know what Scare Straight is, so I'm sure that was funny. Have you seen like the actual Scare Straight? Uh,
So,
like, have you seen the real Scare Straight, like the real version of it, not the skit, but the what the skit is based off of?
oh wait, that's right. I think I've heard about that. That used to come on A&E at the moment until it stopped.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They used to bring back delinquent kids to a jail to scare them to stop being, stop getting in troublemakers. So yeah, yep, Scare Straight. I used to watch that show all the time. It used to be just so funny seeing everybody's experience, and how they reacted.
Yeah, I can tell.
Nice. Anything else? So SNL was the main thing that caught your eye recently.
Let's see. Another movie that caught my eye is it's got to be maybe it's got. Hold on. For one thing I know of, I think it's We Live in Time.
We live in what?
Wait, remember We Live in Time, the movie with Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield?
Let me see. We live in time. Oh, didn't this get nominated for something?
I'm not sure.
Oh no, it didn't. Hold on, I'm gonna share my screen. So it was a romance. It was a romantic drama with Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. Okay, it was a pretty good. What'd you like about it?
The plot of the movie. I I do remember how Alma and Tobias they're trying to set out their differences to work things out.
Okay, where'd you see it at? In theaters or at home?
It's- I was streaming it on Max, so yeah.
Okay, okay, I gotta check this out. I like Andrew Garfield, so um, I'm sure it was good.
And not
I've
gonna
heard
lie,
of this.
that
Huh?
movie was real good.
And it's A24.
Yeah, the company that created Hereditary with Tony Collette.
Yeah, they did a lot of movies. Moonlight, Uncut Gems, It Follows,
What
The
about
Guardian.
Spring Breakers with Selena Gomez and James Franco?
Oh yeah, they did that too. They did, bro. They did so many movies. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, which is their most critically acclaimed movie.
Her that
Um,
won Best Picture at the 2023 Oscars, which is pretty good for a movie for Michelle Yeoh.
did she win Best Actress?
I think she did.
I think she did. Yeah, I think she did. But yeah, Lady Bird, Moonlight, um, The Whale. The funny thing about The Whale is, do you know that movie with Brandon Fraser? Uh,
Yeah, I haven't. I know I haven't seen this, but sounds like a good film to check out. Well, it's directed by Darren Aronofsky, and I know Sadie Sink was starring in this film. So yeah,
well, yeah, Brandon Fraser. This was his comeback role because he wasn't blackballed, but a lot of directors didn't want to work with him because he had got like sexually assaulted by like another actor or actor or producer or somebody, and so he had like reported them, but they never did anything. Like no one did anything about it, and so that like stopped him from working in Hollywood. Like he took a break, and then after that, like nobody uh like picked him up for any movies. But then when The Whale came out, that was his like role back. That was like his newest role after like 15 years or like 10 years, and he actually
Yeah,
got
I think
nominated.
so. And not to be mistaken, how Brendan Fraser had a loss recently. Remember that?
Yeah, um, yeah. So it says, yeah, soon Fraser had, uh, yeah. So he had like a lot of stress. Then he had a divorce. Then his mom died. And he had a bunch of health problems, and then he had a public like a sexual assault. So then he had like a bunch of depression. So that like stopped his career. So he was basically people thought he was like blacklisted, but nobody was just calling him to give him any roles. He said the main reason was probably the allegations about sexual assault. Um, but then he was nominated for a Golden Globe for The Whale, but he didn't go to the awards show because the Golden Globes never supported him or anything, so he didn't go. But he didn't. I don't think he won, but he was nominated for the Golden Globes. So yeah, he had an interesting career. Um, Same with Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, I know Keanu Reeves. Like, I had no idea Brendan was in the FX series Trust. Yes. No
Yeah, he
Trust
was in a
people
lot of
back.
stuff. He was like a very like he was like in a lot of different movies and shows. Like he was pretty high up there, like B-list actor. He was in the Mummy trilogy, um, Journey to the Center of the Earth. You know, not Tarzan, but George of the Jungle. I don't know if people remember that, but yeah, he played some like voice acting roles in the Looney Tunes. So yeah, and he was on like The Simpsons. He was on King of the Hill, Scrubs. Yeah, he voiced the Tasmanian Devil in Looney Tunes. But yeah, A24. Going back to what we are talking about, A20, A24. Um, they produce some movies, but I gotta check out the one you just said. These are all their movies. Remember, I made like a thing where Ex Machina. That was one of my favorites. But I remember I tried to spend a day like watching every A24 movie. Um, and of course I didn't. There's too many. But yeah, the movie I saw recently. Have you heard of Mickey 17?
With Robert Pattinson?
Yeah, I actually saw
Man,
it
that's
last.
what I was picturing in my head the whole time.
You said what?
He began as Mickey 1, then 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, blah, blah, blah. He died 16 times and then he gets recreated back.
Did you see it?
Haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I actually saw it last night at the latest showing. Um, it was okay to me. Of course, Robert Pattinson's a good actor, so he did a good job. But
Of
the
course, Toni
concept.
Collette is in that movie where she plays Gwen.
Who?
Toni Collette, the actress who played Sarah in the movie Krampus, and the voice of Agatha Gilman and Ruby Gilman, Teenage Kraken. And
I think I know who's talking about. Hold on. Wait, oh, wait. Who? What did you say?
Toni Collette, the actress who starred in Juror 2 back on
Oh
November
yeah,
3rd.
yeah. And she was in Knives Out.
I remember Knives Out.
That was a good movie. I like that. Also, Mark Ruffalo was in it. Um, and dude from Beef, Steven Yen.
Stevie Young's
Yeah,
icon.
but
And she was also in The Sixth Sense and Little Miss Sunshine. Um,
yep. But Mickey 17 was okay. I don't think the average person would like it because there was a lot of stuff going on. It was like black comedy, sci-fi mixed with like action. And it's different than Bong Joon-ho, his work. You know, he did Parasite, um, and it was very different than that. It was like similar in terms of like it was a black comedy, but it
yeah,
didn't. He really stepped out the box, which isn't bad, but it was weird. It was weird. So like I would give it like a 7 out of 10. Cinematography was good, but I wasn't as engaged as I usually am with movies. That you know, I was checking my phone a lot. It was just kind of dragging, kind of. But you should see it. I think you like it.
let's see when else movie also true. Hmm? Let's see. You ever heard of the movie called Django Unchained with Jamie Foxx?
Oh yeah, yeah, good.
Tarantino made one of the most interesting films, was that's made for cowboys.
Yeah, I don't have mixed feelings about Quentin Tarantino. You know, everybody loves him and loves his films, but his films didn't. I mean, they're good, but they didn't really change my life. Like, they didn't really like. They're good films, but they didn't, and they have like a big cultural impact. But they didn't. Um, they're not as like I don't know amazing as people make them out to be. Um, but like I said, they're good. It's just like Pulp Fiction. Like his movies have a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of talking and a lot of uh, conversation in his speech. So he's good writer and he knows how to create a good conversation. But I'm not a very dialogue like video movie guy. Like I don't like a lot of talking. I like a lot of action and
I can
thinking
tell.
and like surprises and unpredictability. I like a good mix of dialogue and action. But he did like well, Kill Bill, that was a good mix. But like Pulp
I
Fiction,
can
that was
tell that's with Uma Thurman.
yeah, Uma Thurman, yeah, and she was in Pulp Fiction. But um, yeah, he's just a lot of talking. So I don't know. It's not my cup of tea
Yeah,
exactly. I'm more of a Christopher Nolan type of guy. Um,
I can tell with Oppenheimer and all that. I mean,
yeah,
ever
Tenet.
heard of the 2014 book? Ever heard of the book called The Fault in Our Stars? I heard that
Yeah,
at 20th Century Fox. Yeah, now it's called 20th Century Studios. Shailene Woodley and Ansel Elgort made a movie about The Fault in Our Stars.
yep, I saw it. It was when she had like leukemia or something or cancer.
Yeah, she played a character called Hazel Grace Lancaster.
Yeah, yep, yeah, I saw that. And it was yeah, I saw that. It was like a romantic mood drama, and then like she died, or I think he ended up dying, right?
Yeah.
Ansel's character, um,
Anything else on show? Let's see.
Hansel Elgort. He was in the news too recently for some stuff. Um, like for sexual assault as well. So but his career didn't really take an impact because of that. Because after that, he was in Baby Driver.
Lily James was in Baby Driver, so yeah, I do remember.
Yeah, and Jamie Foxx. Um, and then he was also in that other movie, that musical. What was it called? What was it called? It was like that musical. It was like from like the 70s. West Side Story.
With Rachel Zegler, I remember that. Of
Yeah,
course, Rachel Zegler is starring in the new Snow White movie, which I which I has lots of controversy. I can tell.
yeah. And I saw the 1961 version of West Side Story. Um, but then they did a remake. Yeah, Ansel Elgort, Shailene Woodley. Yeah, but yeah, Mickey 17. No, that was interesting. Um, have you seen Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl?
Mm,
Uh, Me, Earl. It's based off a book.
I mean,
Yeah, it's an independent film. I think this premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in 2014. Sundance, I mean, Film Festival 2015. Yeah, I love independent films. Like independent films, I love them. Especially coming of age independent films. So like Boyhood, mid 90s, Meet Earl and Dying Girl, Florida Project, Moonlight. Like I love those
okay.
movies.
Have you ever seen the film called? What was it? Oh wait, A Real Pain, the movie that's written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg. A Real
Mhm.
Pain. Jesse Eisenberg wrote and directed the movie.
Oh,
I-
I've heard of this because Karen Culkin's in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
heard I won his first Oscar back last week. Back on March 2nd. That's a
Wait, he won an Oscar?
yeah for best supporting actor.
I didn't know he won that.
Now now I knew it. And
And he directed it.
so yeah, Jesse Eisenberg directed this movie. So yeah, she had said written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg. In select years, November 1st, everywhere November 15th.
I gotta check this out actually. It's premiered at Sundance. Yeah, all those Sundance movies. I love Sundance movies. So like Honora, that was a Sundance. Um, The Substance was the Sundance. Have you heard of Sundance Film Festival?
Sundance Film Festival. I saw the words, but I didn't know what it was.
You don't know what it is?
Wait, isn't that like a big old festival where they where they had the celebrities arrive right for the iconic premiere and everything? I mean, I mean, I do watch the video where people been and watching the world premiere of Deadpool and Wolverine. And I ain't gonna lie, them Deadpool and Wolverine outfits that the women were wearing, those are iconic cosplay outfits.
Mm-mm. Yeah, kind of. Sundance Film Festival is the biggest film festival for movies. And it's in, if I'm not mistaken, Utah. Yeah, it's in Park City, Utah. Every year, and top movies, not top movies, but most movies that you see at the Oscars are premiered here on their when they have their like premiere. And it's for independent films. Mm, Actually, it's not always for well, yeah, it's the largest independent film festival. Um, and so, your favorite movies that you've seen have been premiered here. So, like Reservoir Dogs, American Psycho, 500 Days of Summer, Napoleon Dynamite, Whiplash, um, Boyhood, um, No Country for Old Men, um, Precious.
So, yeah, I
So that's been my dream to always want to go to it, but I think you have to, like, you can't just go. I think you can go as the general public, but you got to pay like $500 or something. Actually, it might be more. Um, but yeah, it's the top film festival. All the movies are there. But yeah, okay. Um, Today basically I wanted to talk about um like camera gear and like movies,
honestly,
basically showing examples of movies um and the gear used to perform certain scenes. So I don't know if you know, but like
it's not
shots where they like, like in Fast and Furious
because of the
movies,
life.
when they like show a new location, they say like Dubai or Paris or Tokyo. Um, do you know how they get those like air shots? Uh,
Oh, about that,
so like this, I'll show you.
people have known about the whole old Sundance Film Festival. That's your established shot in film. Okay.
Oh wait, establishing shots. So like like movies like John Wick and Fast and Furious where they do like a shot showing the city that they're in. Um, I want to go over some shots and talk about certain shots and then the gear used. So let me pull up my Google Slides real quick. All right, and then I'll show a video to bring it all together. All right. So have you heard of rule of thirds before?
No.
So rule of thirds is a cinematographer photography concept. So if you ever take a photo class or a cinematography class or any camera class or filmmaking class, you'll hear rule of thirds. And rule of thirds basically is a composition technique that involves dividing an image into 9 equal parts with 2 horizontal and 2 vertical lines. So like this shot from the movie Joker, right? So when you watch the movie, you obviously don't see these lines there because that's distracting. But when the cameraman or camera woman is filming scenes, they typically have this grid, not all the time, but sometimes they have this grid up when they're actually shooting the movie because it helps them with rule of thirds. And so what rule of thirds states is basically that your subject has to be in between these four quadrants, either here and here or here and here, because our eyes are drawn to these portions of the screen, right? So a lot of times when you see a movie, like literally next time you watch a movie, look at that the subject's either going to be over here or over here. They're never going to be in the center. The only time they'll ever
Okay.
be in the only time they'll ever be in the center is if they're trying to show authority. So if you ever see like Thanos in the Avengers, a lot of his shots they'll frame him in the center of of the screen because it shows authority, superiority. But other than that, generally the subjects will always be on the right or left quadrant because this is
Okay,
more
man.
visually appealing to the eye. And here's another movie or show, Sherlock Holmes, right? They have him right here on this side this time. Uh, they never ever put people in the center generally. So I'll show you some other examples. Um, so, uh, so like I was saying in the center sometimes. So in The Shining, they have, uh, um, and what's his character?
Tony.
Yeah, not Johnny. Oh yeah, Johnny. He is in the center of the screen because they're trying to signify that this character is authoritative, superior. He's the the uh the thing we should be focused on. Like he's the power of this scene. So anytime you see someone he's center, it signifies like power or authority. So right here in Jurassic World, we see Chris Pratt's character on the corners. He's not in the center. He's over here. And this, I don't know exactly what movie this is from, but they framed um, Isaac, Isaac,
Right.
forgot his last name, um, Oscar Isaac. Have him over here framed. Um, where else? James Bond, right? These characters are framed, so they'll never have Secret Life of Walter Mitty, right? They have Ben Stiller's character on this quadrant. In the movie Seven, they have Morgan Freeman's character over here. Um, Harry Potter, they have Hermione over here, and that's on purpose. They literally do that because it our eyes are drawn to those points of uh, of the screen. So that's rule of thirds. Ratatouille, that's another example. So that's very common in a lot of movies. It's always at an angle. You always see them at the corner, either here or over here, but never centered like that. Um, unless it's for a specific purpose. But typically, like 9 out of 10 times, they're on these corners. So keep that in mind next time you watch a movie. You'll see they're never directly centered. Okay, so that's rule of thirds. It shows visual, has visual harmony, and that's the point of cinematography, right? So when like at the Academy Awards or movie that cinematography, that falls into a lot of categories, right? It's basically what movie has the best visual harmony, what movie looks the best, and visually to our eyes, what movie looks the best, right? So that could be because of lighting, that could be because of composition, that could be because of the camera angles or the camera itself and the focus and depth of field. All of that matters in terms of visual harmony and cinematography. So cinematography is my favorite part of a film. Um, Even though I know like story is probably more important in acting, but cinematography is my favorite because I'm a photographer and I'm a cinematographer. So that's the first thing that catches my eye, and that's the thing I love the most. So cinematography is basically visual harmony. How can you get the audience to be so immersed in the movie that it's so visually pretty and appealing? Think of movies you've seen that think of all the movies that won best cinematography or were nominated for best cinematography. Nosferatu, right? I don't know if you saw that, but that with Lily Rose Depp, that got nominated for best cinematography, and I knew it would when I first saw it because it was beautiful. It had that old timey look. It was still crisp and focused, but they did weird lighting with that. They used like an old film camera. Same with Euphoria, right? At the Emmys, that I think that either got nominated or won Best Cinematography for a TV show, and it's because they use film for that and the color grading. So those shots um, are always interesting to me. So I love best cinematography because even though it's not a popular like thing people care about, most people care about the actor, right, and best picture or best director. But cinematography is my favorite category. Um, so that's rule of thirds. Very important concept with cinematography and just filmmaking in general. Like that's one thing you have to absolutely understand as a filmmaker. So that's rule of thirds. So next is leading lines. So leading lines is a composition technique in film that guides the viewer's eyes to a specific point of interest. They can be used to create depth, draw attention, and enhance storytelling. So right here in 2001: A Space Odyssey, this is leading lines. You can't see it, it's invisible, but here's the line. Line here, line here, line here, line here, line here, line here, line. So it leads us to the center, right? Our eyes are literally directed to the center of the screen because of these imaginary lines. I could draw these, but they're imaginary. And so this is the technique that cinematographers use to make a shot more visually appealing. So another example is right here, right? Here are the lines on this platform. It's a line here, it's a line here, it's a line here. In nature, we don't see the lines, but there are lines there depending on what angle you're at and what you and how you shoot. But you can see how our eyes are drawing us over here. Even this shot follows rule of thirds, right? They have this subject over here in this corner, not in the center. That's on purpose. So they follow this follows leading lines and rule of thirds. So that's leading lines. It's basically lines leading us. Same here in a Dark Knight with Heath Ledger's character, his Joker. Right here are the lines with this building, and this is actually filmed in Chicago on LaSalle Street. I know exactly where this is, but um, the lines are here, directing us right to the Joker. So it lets us know our eyes should be centered at the center of this shot, and that's the Joker. So this shot is literally telling us to focus on the Joker because of these invisible lines directing us to him, right? So that's leading lines. It's lines, imaginary lines that draw us to a focal point or a central purpose of a shot, right? So next is depth of field. You probably seen this. Have you heard of depth of field?
Right. Depth of field.
Have you heard of it? You probably seen it, but you probably just didn't know it was called depth of field. But I just want to know if you've heard of it. If not, that's fine. I'm just curious.
Never heard of it.
So depth of field is distance between the nearest and furthest object that are in sharp focus in a film image. So like this shot right here, this has a very deep depth of field, right? The subject is in focus, but the background is blurred out, right? So this depth of field is very deep, is very strong. This shot is basically telling us to, and you can even see here, it's still following that rule of thirds, right? Has her on the center, I mean on the edge of the screen, not in the center, right? That's on purpose. But in this case, depth of field is used because it's basically telling us we need to focus on her. Nothing else back here matters. If it did, it would be in focus. We'd be able to see it. But the fact that it's not tells us that all our attention should be directed towards her. Um, so that's depth of field. It's the focus between the foreground and the background. How deep is it? How blurry is it? If it's super blurry, that has a deep depth of field. But if it's not blurry, that has a shallow depth of field, right? So this scene right here has a shallow depth of field. We see everything, right? There's nothing blurred out. There's nothing in focus or out of focus. Everything has the same amount of focus, which is what we want. We want to see this huge landscape, right? We don't want to have anything out of focus or in focus. We want to see everything. So there's no right or wrong. It just depends on what you want to see, right? Right here. Um, and I'm sorry, I think I switched them up, but this is shallow. Sorry, I did that on accident. Shallow is when it's more blurry. Deep is when it's less blurry. So like this shot with this dog, right? You can see the difference. This shallow depth of field is a lot blurrier. Um, in the background. This deep depth of field is clear. So in this shot, we can see everything. But in this shot, we just want to focus on the dog because if we wanted to see what was back there, we would increase our depth of field and make it deeper. So, like I said, neither one of these are wrong. It's just a matter of why they're being used. In this shot, we may want to focus on something else coming behind the dog in the background. But with this shot, probably not. We just want to focus on the dog. So that's depth of field. It's the amount of blurriness between the background and the foreground. That's a cinematography concept, but it's also a photography concept. So movies like this, where you see it's like extremely blurred out, that's a very shallow depth of field. So a lot of movies when they have a strong, and this is due to the lens of the camera, right? So we can get deep into that later, but depending on what lens they have, they can make it blurry or less or more blurry. Um, so that's depth of field. It's the amount of focus. So symmetry, you probably heard of this. This is a universal concept in math, science, nature, art, music, right? Symmetry is just the mirroring of elements across the axis. It gives it creates a sense of balance, unity, and order. So right here in The Shining, here's symmetry. If we cut this in half, it will be equal on both sides. Right? We have twin girls, both sides look equal. The only difference really is, I guess, the picture, right? It's no picture. It's a picture here, but not one here. So if we split this in half, it obviously wouldn't be exactly identical, but it's pretty identical, right? If we split them in half. Here again, this is symmetry, right? If we cut this like this in half, this side will be equal to this side. That's an appealing picture. That's visually appealing. It makes us want to look at it because it's something about it that adds order, unity, and harmony. Uh, it's just something about it being so identical on both sides that our eyes can't really stop looking at it, right? Again, here, if we split this in half, equal size, right? Well, got both chandeliers or like these lamps, and then we have the chairs. And then if we split this guy up, cut them, it's basically the same on both sides, right? Same with the chandelier. The only thing is, really wouldn't be like this cigarette, this cigar bowl. That's the only thing. But other than that, like it's pretty symmetrical. So that's symmetry. So headroom. Headroom is exactly what it sounds like, right? It's the amount of space between the top of a subject's head and the top of the frame. So right here, this is good headroom, right? We get a good amount of space between the top of the frame and then this guy's head. So we just have a little bit of space up here, which is what we want. Because if we have too much space, it'd be like, hey, why are we doing that? But if we don't have enough space, it's like, well, we cut off his head. We need to know that. So right here, this would be an example of too much headroom. It's too much space right here, right? But at the same time, that could be a stylistic choice. Let's say a director wanted this shot because he wants the airplane to fly over his head or something like that. So it could be the stylistic choice. But if we're talking about just the fundamentals of headroom, I wouldn't say this is a good headroom because it's too much space. Why do we have this space right here? Now, if we're showing an airplane or like a blimp or something up here or a bird or something that we need to see, okay, then it makes sense. But if it's just there just to be there, it's probably shouldn't have that. Um, so here's another diagram, right? Proper headroom, too much headroom, too little headroom, right? We cut off too much right here, but here is too much space. And then uh right here is good, right? So that's good headroom.
So too little headroom. Wait. Too little, too much proper. Oh wait, it has to be in the proper position.
Right. So we can see how this guy's head, we got a good amount of space, right? Between the top and the bottom. We can breathe. But this one is too much. It's too much space. Like, why is all that space right there? Let's push him up some. But here is not enough headroom. Why are we cutting off this dude's hair? Why can't we see it? So that's what I'm saying. This is the best shot because we get a good amount of space between the top and his head. Now, I don't know if you've seen the show Mr. Robot with Rami Malek, um, but this show actually was really important to me and pivotal because this actually got me into really inspired me in photography and cinematography. Like this was the first show that did that for me. Now, take a look at this headroom, how we just talked about how it's too much space. Well, first of all, this show won a bunch of awards. I think it won like literally 4 awards. It's called Mr. Robot. It has it has Rami Malek and Christian Slater in it. It was on USA Network, and it premiered from like 2014, I think, to like 2018, and so or
Good
2015 to
Rami
like 20.
Malek starring in a new film called The Amateur coming out this April.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, Rami Malek's good, but this was his breakthrough role. I mean, he was in a couple other things. I think he was in Twilight, if I'm not mistaken. He was like one of the vampires. But this show got him like known because he was the main character and he did a really good job. It's about a hacker who hacks the government to uh, get people to get all their money back. So he hacked like the finance, like every like it's this mega corporation called E Corp that owns all finances and whatever. So this guy basically hacked it and gave everybody their money back. But now they're trying to like but they basically found out that he was the hacker. And this show basically shows him traveling through New York as this hacker, and these people are trying to come after him. But he's such a good hacker that he like disguises himself, hides his location, but they end up finding him. So it's like this very cyber psychotic war. So it's really weird. Like it's a dark psychological sci-fi show. So if you like sci-fi, if you like computers and like hacking and stuff, it's a very good show. But it also like talks about mental health, talks about like the human psyche. So he's like takes a lot of drugs, and it's a lot of like guest stars on the show. It's a really really good show. The director is Sam Esmail. He's the one who directed the movie. Um, it was on Netflix. Oops, wow. It was like trending for a long time. It was leave the world behind. Uh, have you seen this on Netflix with
Um,
Marshall Ali, Julia Roberts, Ethan Hawke? It was very popular um, on Netflix, but he directed that. But what I was getting at was that this show, not only was it a good story and good acting, the cinematography was amazing. Now you remember when I talked about headroom and rule of thirds? First of all, this follows rule of thirds. Like literally every shot right here you see is not centered. They're in a corner somewhere, or over here, or over here. Nothing's centered, right? And that's cinematography 101. So they check that box off. But then the headroom, right? Now, you remember how I talked about this is too much headroom, and we have this huge gap? That was a stylistic choice. He used that to show how isolated and secluded this character was. So there was actually an intent and purpose for the cinematographer to you do this, right? So that's what I'm saying. You could do certain things if it has a purpose, but just to do it, I wouldn't recommend it. But it makes sense why they did it in this case because it was showing how this hacker, he was alone, isolated, depressed, mental, never had anybody around him. He had a bad headspace. So they showed that by using these camera shots, by having him always off to the corner and leaving a gap in between the top of the frame and his head. So Mr. Robot, and every shot is beautiful. Like literally, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Literally every single shot in every scene is amazing. Like they do a really good job. That's why I said this show really inspired me as a cinematographer. Like the eye and the visuals for this show was amazing. Beyond the acting and the story and directing, just the shots themselves were so appealing. So uh, that's another thing where like certain shots in headroom, you can play around, but it has to have a purpose. Okay. So that's Mr. Robot. Next is balance, right? So balance is the distribution of visual weight in a frame to create a sense of stability, order, and harmony. So like this, right? So this shot will be unbalanced because uh we have stuff showing here, but nothing on this side. It's almost like we're missing something. Like, why is there nothing here, but there's something here? But here is balance. Now we have two things on both sides. Our eyes are more at ease, right? So this is a better shot than this one because we have things balancing out, right? Same with the colors, right? Not, that orange and yellow. I mean, that orange and blue, they contrast. So that's balanced. But just the shot itself is balanced, right? Over here, it's like we're missing something right there. But here is balanced. So all you got to do is add something to make it balanced. Uh, we'll come back to this. So I'm going to show this video that basically sums up what we just talked about. Um, uh,
Have you ever been
hold on. Uh, let's see if this is it. Yeah. All right. So can you see this, my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right. So I'm gonna actually stop sharing and reshare in a second. So this is basically 8 steps to cinematic composition. They're gonna mention Mr. Robot because it's one of those shows that just do it. No other show has done it like that. But here, basically, some of what we talked about. So, you know what?
Hey guys, Justice here with tomorrowsfilmmakers.com, the largest online film academy in the world. And today we're going to be talking about cinematic composition. Now, composition is a fancy term for what is in the frame and where is it located. And it might sound simple, but a certain frame can be much more appealing to a viewer than others and also much more cinematic. Now, inside our full course, we have a 6-hour long cinematography course taught by Chris Kimlin, who has been the director of photography on many different feature films, and he takes you in depth on everything you need to know about cinematography. Now, we have been selling our film course successfully for years with an $800 price tag, and we've had over 4,000 students join. But right now, we are doing something we have never done before, and we are running an insane sale of only $97. Our entire lifetime membership to our award-winning $800 film course for only 97 bucks. And I'm not even joking. If you want to take advantage of this crazy deal, you can check out our website in the link below and head on over to tomorrowsfilmmakers.com to learn more. But in this training, I'm going to give you guys my 8 steps that I take to make sure that I have great composition. And the great thing is you can do this with any camera that you have, a DSLR, cell phone, or pretty much anything. You don't need to buy some expensive lights or a Ronin S or an expensive lens to get more cinematic images. All you have to do is watch this video and apply these steps to your filmmaking. Now, the first rule that all of you guys need to apply is the rule of thirds. Now, the rule of thirds is a very well-known technique in the filmmaking world that you might be familiar with, but you also might not be using it properly. In a nutshell, it is scientifically proven that our eyes are drawn to these 4 intersecting points of the frame, not the direct center, but these 4 corners. So by placing our subject on those 4 corners, it looks very much appealing and much more cinematic to the audience. Watch any Hollywood movie and you will notice that the main subjects are almost always on one of these intersecting points. Now, the center of the frame is always reserved for subjects with authority. If your subject is teaching or has more authority, you can put them in the center of the frame. That's why all master classes and other teaching videos, including one like this, are always placed in the middle. It just automatically gives your subject more authority in whatever he's talking about and makes it look like this is the main subject and I need to be listening to this person. Now, if you have a subject looking into the camera but off to one side, it doesn't feel quite as compelling as if they're in the center of the frame. But if your subject is not doing that, always put them on the rule of thirds. For landscapes or horizons, place them on one of the two lines going across, and you will have an appealing image. The great thing is pretty much all cameras have a rule of thirds overlay built in, so you can have the rule of thirds on the back of your camera to get great composition with whatever camera you have. Something as simple as placing your subject on the rule of thirds can completely change your image. Number 2 is balance. Inside your frame, you can have one side more heavy than the other, and the audience can actually feel it. Like in interviews, if you have your subject to one side and also a picture frame on the same side as your subject, your image is going to start to feel unbalanced and very heavy to one side. And even if the audience doesn't know what feels wrong, they just know that something feels off. You can either move that picture frame to the other side or just add something to balance out the image, like a lamp. This looks much more balanced and much more cinematic. And when it comes to composition, I try to have something on the other side of my frame to balance out my subject at all times. And it doesn't have to be something huge, and it also doesn't need to be horizontal. It can also be balanced vertically or diagonally, whether it's a building, a statue, even a flower, something in the frame to balance the image, or your shot will start to look really heavy to one side. You can obviously apply this to interviews and talking head videos, but you can also apply this to weddings, real estate, and all other types of videos. It really doesn't matter. Just make sure that you have balance in your frame. Number 3 is depth. You can create depth in many different ways, but one way is to shoot with a lower aperture. Not only will it make your image have more depth by blurring out the background, but it will also make it more cinematic and can also remove any distractions from your audience. This shot looks great, but you had no idea that there was something distracting in the background because we removed the distraction by shooting in a lower aperture. By blurring out the background, we create depth and separate our subject from the background. Another simple way to create depth is to simply pull your subject away from the background. It might seem simple, but I've seen many filmmakers film interviews up against a wall, giving your image absolutely no depth, and it doesn't look cinematic. If I have to film an interview in a small room, I will inconvenience myself in order to have depth in my image. I'll push myself and the cameras as far in a corner as possible to bring my subject as far away from the background as possible. You can also add something interesting in the foreground to create depth. And by placing something in the foreground, we're able to not only show movement much easier, but it creates depth in our image and allows us to kind of shoot through it. It doesn't have to be anything large like a person or an object. It could be something small like leaves or plants or coming around from behind something as more of a reveal. We have our subject, the foreground, and the background creating depth. Number 4 is leading lines. These are simply natural lines in your composition that lead your audience to your subject. They can be found in everyday objects like hallways, landscapes, bridges, and they simply draw in your audience's attention to your subject. Now, they use leading lines in Hollywood all the time to bring attention to something. In USA's Mr. Robot, in this building, our subject always knows where he needs to go, and we as an audience know where he needs to go by the leading lines throughout the scene. But when our main character gets lost, what happens to those leading lines? They are gone. The character doesn't know where to go, and we as an audience don't know where he needs to go because there are no leading lines leading our eyes to the subject or the direction he should go. Something as simple as lines in the frame can lead our eyes towards a subject or away from the subject. So look for leading lines in your image to draw the attention of the audience. Some are very obvious, like staircases or a handrail, but some can be even more subtle, like the top of a picnic table. The tablecloth works great, but removing the tablecloth so we have those lines on the top pointing towards our subject really make a difference. Number 5 is symmetry. As humans, we love order and we love to see something symmetrical. It looks appealing to us and very cinematic. Now, symmetry is everywhere. Windows, stairs, escalators, it is everywhere. Symmetry also doesn't take much effort to get. Looking at a person one way might look fine, but you might be able to just move the camera slightly to frame the shot in a way that's more symmetrical. This shot not only looks very symmetrical because of the building, but even has leading lines straight to our subject. All of this was done by barely moving the camera. So look around and find symmetry. Frame your shot and compose it properly to get the most natural and most cinematic project you've ever made. Number 6 is a dominant subject. If I critique a student's video, one of the main problems I see most often is that there is no dominant subject. You want to use all of these steps we just talked about to draw your audience towards the subject. But if the audience doesn't even know what the subject is, then you've completely failed in what you were trying to do. And having a dominant subject doesn't mean that you can't do a wide angle shot and have to be close up on their face. It just means that when an audience looks at an image, they need to know exactly where their eyes need to go. They need to know exactly what they're supposed to be looking at. First thing is to fill the frame. Way too often people have empty space that is unnecessary. Now, some people will say, oh, it's artistic. No, it's not. It's distracting. You can be artsy and not distracting. Having this as your main subject, but this is in your frame, this is not artsy. This is sloppy. And most of the time, it's just a simple mistake, and they don't fully fill the frame. So please, fill the frame and get rid of all unnecessary dead space. Number 2 is when you fill the frame, fill it with things that aren't distracting. If we have lots of empty dead space, I would frame it so that you remove some of the dead space. But if you needed to actually fill that frame, if we add something really bright or with movement that's going to be distracting, our audience is going to be confused. We have a dominant subject by shooting at a lower aperture, using symmetry and leading lines to bring attention to our subject and removing all dead space in the frame. Number 7 is headroom or leading room. Have you ever heard the filmmaking phrase, hey, give them some breathing room? This is what they mean. First is headroom. This is the space from the top of the frame to the top of your subject's head. In an interview, you typically want to have your subject's eyes about 2/3 from the top of the frame, and this means that you want to have some room above their head. You don't want their head to be all the way at the top of the frame, and on the flip side, you don't want there to be tons of empty space above their head. Now, there isn't a hard and fast rule to this because all interviews are different, and I've had interviews with people with giant hair, and so you have to determine if you want to have all of the hair in the frame or cut off some of the hair, but it's best to keep their eyes on the top line in the rule of thirds. Now, leading room or looking room is the exact same thing, except it's with the direction your subject is looking. Whatever way they are looking, you want to give them looking room. And just like with headroom, having their eyes about 2/3 of the frame, you would want to give your subject about 2/3 of the frame to look into. The basic rule is you want more room in front of your subject than behind them. And this is why with a lot of interviews, whatever way your subject is facing, they will place their eyes on the corresponding intersecting point on the rule of thirds. This will give them the perfect headroom and leading room. And of course, this doesn't have to be with interviews. Any shot or conversation that takes place, you want to give them headroom and looking room. And you would also want to do this when your subject is moving. You want to anticipate the movement without just reacting to it. If a subject moves, you want to move with them with the same amount of looking room as if you weren't moving. You wouldn't want to react late and it look like the subject is almost pushing the frame or forcing the movement. Leading room and headroom should always be used unless number 8 is actually one of my favorites, and it is to break the rules. And I know we just talked about how important it is to keep some of these rules, and I'm not saying to break them for no reason, but it is very cinematic to break the rules for a specific purpose. Now, each of these rules communicates something. So to break the rules will also communicate something else. So if you break the rule, make sure it is communicating what you intended it to communicate. The King's Speech is a perfect example. It's about a man who is soon to become king, but he has a stutter. This person, who should be the most powerful person in the film, he should be in the center of the frame and dominate every scene he's about to be king, is so scared to death when he meets his speech therapist. And this is because he's embarrassed by what he has. They purposefully film him with a crazy amount of headroom to show just how small and insignificant he feels. Then, whenever they have a conversation, they give him no looking room at all to again give us the feeling of awkwardness. When he finally gains the courage, they give him looking room and they give him headroom to show that everything is back to normal. This rule was broken purposefully. One of my favorite films when it comes to composition is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Starting out, our main character is depressed and he's a loser. And at the beginning of the film, they almost frame him out of the shot, breaking the rule of thirds by placing him at the very bottom or at the very edge of the screen. But at the end of the film, our hero is placed in the center to show progression, is to show his character development. And the contrast of these two shots is crazy. And all of it communicates a message. So as you can see, composition isn't just one step or one simple thing you can do. It's a series of steps that bring the audience's attention to our main subject, because that is our goal, to show our audience exactly where we want them to look by having the most pleasing looking image and the most cinematic. But also, like we just showed you, sticking to the rules 100% can ruin creativity. And just like with all rules, they can be broken, but they must have a reason to be broken. If our subject was framed like this, but he had his life completely in order, it would feel distracting and unnecessary. So every single shot tells a story. Where you place your subject in the frame tells a story. Be purposeful with your composition, and by taking these 8 steps, you are guaranteed to boost the production value of your projects and achieve cinematic results. So I hope that this video has really...
So yeah, that's basically just a recap of what I just mentioned. Yeah, so I want to actually show a trailer, and I'm going to just point out, just to show you how common this is, I'm going to actually show a trailer um, called Against the Ice on Netflix, and let's see some of these concepts come into play and see if we can get any, compositional techniques that we mentioned.
Sure. The record?
All right. So this movie is not on Netflix anymore, I don't think, but I really like this movie. It's about like these two adventurers on an expedition looking for information that these other guys who died had. So they're trying to retrieve their information from their dead bodies to bring it back to Greenland. So they're going on an expedition to find these bodies to get the information that those guys gathered and bring them back to Greenland. So they're on this, and obviously Greenland is extremely cold and a bunch of elements. So it's an adventure, life or death survival kind of movie. But let's just see if we see any concepts so far.
When you travel into unknown lands to discover new parts
Right there, already, Rules of Thirds got this character off to the corner.
of the globe, it is to ensure
And with this character, hold on, let me close this.
new parts of the globe. It is to ensure
The Rules of Thirds here.
the records of your discoveries are delivered back safe and sound, with or without you.
Rules of Thirds again.
To lead a volunteer to accompany me across the ice cap to retrieve the findings of the missing Denmark expedition. Captain, I'd like to come with you.
Depth of field and Rule of Thirds.
If you'd allow me. And what do you know about sledging and surviving on the ice when it's 40 below? He's a mechanic, risking your life. He's the only man willing to make the trip. The Denmark expedition all died. Who knows if they even found anything?
3, 2, 1. It's like we've landed on the moon.
What do you think really happened to the Denmark expedition? You never think you can't make it. You always believe there'll be a way. It's not working anymore. There's no life. Didn't even see a bird. Is there a point where perhaps we want to give up? We have a map. We will find it, and we will be back on the ship by August. You don't think we can make it, do you? There's truth in every dream, honestly. You see it as truth.
You do know that no one is coming to get you. You're going to die up here.
You can go, Steph. You might freeze to death. Starve. Lose your mind. And we must push on. To hope.
Yeah. So yeah, I really like this movie. But okay. So let's move on to types of shots. Now that we talked about composition, leading lines, let's go on to some type of shots, right? So establishing shot. Have you ever heard of that, Elijah? So there. Well, establishing shot is a wide or extreme shot that establishes the context for a scene. It's usually the first shot of a scene and provides the audience with information about where and when the action is taking place. So an establishing shot is exactly what it sounds like. It establishes the location of where the scene is taking place. So usually you'll see this at the beginning of a movie, so we know where we are. So in this shot, we see Hogwarts. So this is an establishing shot of Hogwarts. So this lets us know that this scene is probably going to be at Hogwarts, right? So right here, this James Bond movie. We don't know exactly where this is, but it lets us know that it's probably in this house. Wherever the scene is about to start, it's probably in this house. So that's an establishing shot. It establishes where the scene will be taking place. It's usually a wide shot, right? So we can see a house or a bridge or a school or a building, somewhere to show us where this next scene will be taking place. Emerald City and the Wizard of Oz, right? This is an establishing shot as well, letting us know we are at a we're headed to Emerald City. So next is a wide shot. So a wide shot is a camera shot that shows the subject within their surrounding environment. So in Blade Runner 2049, this is a wide shot, right? It shows us the subject relative to their environment. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a wide shot. We see the whole subject plus their environment. Here's another wide shot. It shows their environment in relation to the subject. So that's a wide shot, a camera shot that shows the subject within their surrounding environment. So how is it different than a medium shot? Well, a medium shot is a camera and film or TV that shows the subject from around the waist to the top of their head. So this is a medium shot. A medium shot is basically a shot from the waist up. That is exactly what it is, just from the waist up. So right here in Wonder Woman also follows rule of thirds. So that's a medium shot. So a wide shot shows a subject in relation to their environment. Medium shot is a shot from their waist to the top of their head. So a close up. So a close-up is a camera technique in film and television that tightly frames a person or object to show more details than other types of shots. Close-ups are used to add emotion to a scene, establish emotional connection with the audience, and emphasize reaction. So Johnny in The Shining, this is a close-up shot, right? It's the close-up because we want to see the the emotion on his face, how crazy and psychotic he is. So that's a perfect use of a close-up because it shows us his emotion. And Get Out with Daniel Kaluuya's character, we see the tears, shows us how he's in this weird mental psychosis state. Um, and We see that and we feel strongly because we see the tears and we see his face. So we see that. So that's a close up. A close up shows the emotion or indicates something important about a subject or a scene. And it doesn't always have to be a person's face. Like a close up could be a close up of a water bottle, it could be a close up of a dog, it could be a close up of a bug. It's just showing us that this is important. We need to see this for a certain reason. Because close ups are used to show emotion or show importance. Then after a close up, we have extreme close up. So it's exactly like a close up, just go extreme, uh, get more extreme, right? You go more into it. So extreme close-up is a camera shot that fills the frame with the subject, often focuses on a specific detail like their eyes, lips, or hands. Extreme close-ups are more intense version of a close-up shot, and they could be used to create intimacy, convey emotion, or emphasize something. So here are some examples of extreme close-ups, right? You got to get really, really tight in there. So in X-Men, we see Magneto's eye, and Zodiac, we see this watch, so that lets us know that that zodiac sign or something about this watch or time is really important. We see this water droplet, this light, and then this plant. So it lets us know that something about this is important or is meant to convey something, right? So that's the only reason we would get an extreme close up. All right. So next is a high angle. So a high angle shot is a camera technique that involves filming a subject from above, making the subject appear smaller and more vulnerable. So this is a high angle shot. We're literally taking the camera and aiming up at a high angle, and aiming down. So it makes the Hobbit look more vulnerable, smaller, more inferior to us as the viewer because we're aimed down at him. So it looks like he's smaller or more vulnerable than us. This shot in Harry Potter, right, is aimed upwards. So it's like we're looking down at Harry. So it's like we're the Death Eaters and we're coming to attack Harry. So it makes him look more vulnerable to us. The low angle is the opposite. So it's when if a high angle makes a subject or a character look more vulnerable or inferior, low angle makes a character look superior or stronger. So it's when we're aiming it from a low shot. So low angle is the camera angle position below the subject eye looking up, which typically makes the subject appear powerful, dominant, or larger than life. So in Pulp Fiction, we're aimed up. It makes it seem like we're in the back of the trunk and we're looking at these guys. It makes it feel like they're in power and we're vulnerable. Right? Same with this shot of the Joker. It makes it seem like he's the dominant one and we're kind of looking up to him and he's powerful because the way that the shot is angled. So a Dutch shot is a camera technique that tilts the camera on the axis to create an off-kilter, disorienting effect. So it's basically when a camera curves, but it's technically called a Dutch, but it's when a camera curves, it's to make it seem like it gives it a more, it gives it a more, what word did they use? A disorienting effect. Yeah, it makes things look more disorienting, right? Same like this in Thor right here. I forgot what movie this is, but see how it's kind of curved? That's what that is, a Dutch angle. So overhead. So this is the overhead shot, basically. It's a shot shooting from overhead, or they sometimes call it a God's point of view. Um, but that's an overhead shot. It's basically shooting from overhead, looking down. Another shot. So a tracking shot. Okay. Yeah. So those are some shots. So I'll show a video to tie that all together. This is the right one. I'll do this one first and move on to the next one.
Films are made up of sequences. Sequences are made up of scenes. And scenes are made up of shots. But we must understand the characteristics and storytelling value of each shot.
Don't be a.
In this video, we'll begin with the big picture and work our way down. We're going to define the essential shot sizes in a filmmaker's toolbox and how to use the right shot at the right time to create memorable moments on screen. This is episode 1 of The Shot List. Shot size. Shot choices help establish the rhythm, tone, and meaning of a scene. Knowing which shot will be the most aesthetically and dramatically valuable for a given scene should be the highest priority for both a director and a DP. In this video, we'll be examining essential shot sizes. As we go, we'll populate a shot list in Studio Binder as a sort of cheat sheet the next time you need to create one. Now, let's get to the shots. The most common visual element to open a scene or even an entire film is the establishing shot. It is typically wide enough to establish the geography, time of day, show the scale of subjects in relation to their environment, and is often used to transition between scenes. With genres like science fiction, where entirely new worlds need to be introduced, the establishing shot is crucial. Blade Runner 2049 opens with a series of establishing shots. We get the first impressions of near-future Earth with industrial and futuristic farms outside the city. So remember, an establishing shot is a crucial introductory component of any scene. It can mark a transition to a new location, or introduce crucial details about the location or world. The establishing shot is often followed up with a master shot, or simply the master. Like the establishing shot, a master shot confirms the location and geography of the scene. It also clarifies which characters are in the scene and where they are in relationship to each other.
Come on, sit down. Come on. Talk to each other. Sit down. Hey, Miss Einstein.
Here, we see a master from The Godfather Part 2, framing the Corleone family around a dinner table.
Sally, get in here.
The majority of this scene is played in the master to emphasize the family's close-knit relationship.
Country ain't your blood, you remember that. I don't remember it.
Until Michael drops some devastating news.
Well, if you don't feel like that, why don't you just quit college and go to join the army? I did. I enlisted in the Marines. Why didn't you think of us? Hey, Pop had to pull a lot of strings to get your deferment. Well, I didn't ask for it. I didn't ask for a deferment. I didn't want it.
But it also helps make Michael split from the family visual, from this to this. and we feel the emptiness around him that much more. Remember, the master captures the scene playing out in its entirety, providing the editor with something to cut out to, if necessary. Moving on. Wide shot, WS.
Let me tell you about my boat.
The wide shot positions subjects far from the camera to visually represent their relationship to their environment. This is distinct from the establishing shot, which is about location. The wide shot is principally concerned with the scale of the subject.
I'm finished.
It can be used when you need to make subjects appear lost, lonely, or overwhelmed, or comment on a subject's relationship to their environment. In this wide shot from Phantom Thread, we can see the characters Alma and Reynolds dwarfed by a messy ballroom. Paul Thomas Anderson could have ended the scene with close-ups to capture their characters' emotions. But by ending with a wide shot here, we can consider Alma and Reynolds together, yet isolated from the world around them. Use it when you need to establish the spatial relationships of the subjects. Make statements using distance, depth, or size. Our next subject, full shot. When a subject's entire body reaches from the top to the bottom edges of the frame, the shot is defined as full. With a full shot, it's not necessary to put the subject in the center of the frame, but notice how often this is the case. This example is effective because it is tight enough to tell a story with the character's face, but wide enough to further the story by observing her entire body, posture, and wardrobe. So remember, a full is composed head to toe, and you can use them when you need to make statements about a subject's physicality and present a character in all their glory. Moving on. Medium full shot, cowboy. The medium full shot is arranged from the top of the subject's head to just below their waist. It is sometimes referred to as a cowboy shot based on the height of gun holsters. Here we can see complementary angles from The Favorite, composed in medium fulls. The cowboy angle on the character Lady Sarah is particularly strong and confrontational. This isn't a Western and features no holsters, but it's hard not to think of cowboys when firearms are deployed like this. Use it when you need to present a subject as confident, dangerous, or confrontational, especially when weapons might be drawn. Moving on. Medium shot, MS. Perhaps the most popular shot size in all of cinema is the medium shot. But why? Because it's more of a neutral shot, neither dramatic like a close-up or distancing like a wide shot. It captures the subject in a size similar to how we interact with people.
Will you hold still?
The typical composition of a medium shot starts above the waist but below the chest and ends just above the head. Shot sizes deployed in animated films function under the same compositional rules.
Oh,
Hello.
Let's look at an example to better illustrate this. In this scene from Coco, Miguel watches a film starring his idol. The medium shot composition accommodates quite a bit. The props from Miguel's shrine, the detail on the TV screen, and Miguel's reactions to it. It's an intimate moment as we observe Miguel's joy, along with the objects of his affection in a single frame.
Follow my heart. You know that feeling?
So remember, the typical composition of a medium shot starts above the waist, but below the chest, and ends just above the head. Use it when you need to dig into a subject's eyes without losing their physicality or environment, or utilize a true middle ground approach that is neither jarring nor especially dramatic. Our next subject, medium close-up shot, MCU. When a shot frames a subject from mid-chest to just above their head, it is referred to as a medium close-up. Medium close-ups are about reducing distraction and prioritizing story and character details.
Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
Use it when you need to get intimate with a subject without losing their physicality. Here, the villainous Thanos snaps his fingers during the climactic moments of Avengers Endgame. With this shot size, we have room for the Infinity Gauntlet, and Thanos' look of cruel satisfaction in thinking he had won. But when he fails, this medium close-up is designed to also capture his reaction. Remember, a medium close-up is roughly head to chest. Are you ready for it? It's the close-up. See you.
Here's Johnny.
Of course, the most powerful visual weapon for highlighting a change in emotion or dramatic beat on screen. Close-ups are most often arranged at eye level, better to dig into the windows of a soul. In this shot size, we have a front row seat for a character's thoughts and feelings.
Really? Yes, anything.
The close-up is about empathy and illustrates how dramatically effective it can be in a time of decision or anxiety. Our final category, extreme close-up shot, ECU. An extreme close-up, or ECU, frames a subject to isolate a specific area. This could be lips, ears, or nose, but the eyes are typically the focus. Like here in Kill Bill Volume 1. As the bride is swarmed by the crazy 88, we cut back and forth between their entry points and her frantic eyes. But when the function of a specific prop or an intimate detail is necessary, filmmakers will often rely on the insert shot. Inserts are most commonly used to highlight and isolate something crucial to the narrative. So remember, an extreme close-up or an insert shot is one of the greatest tools for emphasis. It is the most intimate, dramatic, and potentially startling of all shot sizes. So, this is our shot list made in Studio Binder so far. It has all of the most common shot sizes you can reference the next time you need to create a shot list. You can find a link to the full shot list in the description. If you're looking for shot listing software to automate the process, check the description for a link to Studio Binder. It's free to get started. In the next episode of this series, we'll explore framing and composition. Subscribe to our channel, click the bell to stay in the loop, and happy shot listing.
So that was just video that summed it all up. There's one more video I want to show.
Once we got to camera angles, every camera shot explained. Camera angles. These are all. I bet these are all different ways about camera shots.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard me prior, but I was showing some examples of uh
I think I saw the examples of what you.
like these.
Yeah, I probably saw all of them. The low
Okay.
angles. I think I remember seeing.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was just showing you so you know like why they're used. Okay, but if you said you saw them, then that's fine. Did you need me to recap them, or you think you could? Did you need me to go over one more time, or you think you got it? Elijah, can you hear me? Hello, hello. All right. Well, I'll just play this.
Films are made up of sequences. Sequences are made of scenes. And scenes are made up of shots. In the previous episode of this series, we went over how to frame your subjects, to isolate individuals, or create relationships. But as shot size and framing are decided, you'll need to consider camera height, specifically the angle of the camera. This is episode 3 of the shot list. Camera angles. If shot size and framing are used to isolate what we are looking at, camera angles are all about how we are meant to perceive them. That adds yet another layer of meaning to every camera shot. We'll be looking at 9 different types of camera angles. As we cover each camera angle and technique, we'll be filling out a shot list using Studio Binder that you can download and reference. Now, let's begin with our first camera angle, the low angle. Any shot that finds itself below a subject's eye line, looking up at them, is a low angle shot. Low angle shots are typically used to make a subject look more powerful, perfect for heroes and villains alike. The degree can be subtle or extreme. Low angles are not confined to human subjects like in 2001, but the effect is the same. Let's look at the scene.
Man, that lousy Mufasa. Man, I hate lions. Pushing and hairy. And man, are they pleased.
Surely that's not that bad.
Oh, Scar, it's just you.
Consider this low angle shot of Scar. Everything about this shot spells villainy. The color, the smoke, the darkness, the expression. But it is the low angle that brings it all together. For more on the low angle shot, check the description for our video where we break down how to use a low angle in more detail. Up next, complementary angle often paired with the low angle, the high angle shot. While low angle shots can pump a character up, high angle shots can beat them down. High and low angle shots are often paired in the same scene to heighten the imbalance of power between subjects. High angles are typically used to diminish a character, making them appear weak or vulnerable. An extreme variation of the high angle is the aerial shot, typically used to establish environments, cities, landscapes, or to present characters moving through a larger world.
Northeast.
What, did you stop for drive-through?
For a rather extreme example of a high-angle shot, we look to the Avengers. A powerful hero needs a powerful villain. And what better way to challenge our muscle-bound protagonists than a threat that dwarfs them? In the description, you'll find a link to our high-angle video essay where we break down how to use this towering shot to convey narrative or character details and elicit a viewer's emotional response. When high angles approach 90 degrees above the subject, they become the overhead shot. An overhead shot, also known as a bird's eye view or a God's eye view, finds the camera directly above the subject, shooting straight down. Overhead shots are great for showcasing complex movements, and they could suggest a connection to the divine, or to capture the horrific details of a crime scene. Consider this moment from The Master. Freddie lays above his fellow sailors, most likely drunk and unconscious, but the shot is presented without context. All we see is a character who is disconnected. In more ways than one. And now, an angle that puts us off balance. The Dutch angle. The Dutch angle shot skews the horizontal axis of the frame for an off-kilter image that produces a variety of effects. A Dutch angle can create a sense of unease, mania.
Jim, if you don't buy things, toilet paper, new cars, computerized blenders, electrically operated sexual devices, serial systems, and brain
Terror, or bewilderment.
You're worried about me. Why?
A Dutch angle can also be used to magnify tension. In Do the Right Thing, director Spike Lee uses Dutch angles to intensify the vitriol between embittered characters. As the racial tensions rise to a boiling point, so does the angle of the tilt. But there are nuances to properly set up a Dutch angle for maximum impact. Check the description to our video essay where we break down Brian De Palma's Dutch angle from this scene in Mission Impossible.
You want to shake hands with the devil? That's fine with me. I just want to make sure that you do it in hell.
Moving on. The eye level shot. Shooting an eye level is perhaps the most commonly used camera height. For the audience, it is the most natural height to regard a character. An eye level shot doesn't impose judgment on a character in the way a high or low angle shot does. But that doesn't mean it can't be engaging or dynamic.
An IPO is an initial public offering. It's the first time a stock is offered for sale to the general population.
In The Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort delivers this monologue straight into the camera at eye level.
Well, I know you're not following what I'm saying anyway, right? That's okay. That doesn't matter. The real question is this. Was all this legal? Absolutely not.
The eye level shot, along with breaking the fourth wall, creates an instant connection to Jordan and his scheme.
Oh!
For more on the fourth wall, check the description for a video essay on how it can be used to create an instant rapport with your characters. Now, if we drop just a little below the eyes, we land at our next camera height. The shoulder level shot. If eye level is the most common and neutral shot height, then shoulder level is the runner-up. The lower position gives the illusion of a slightly low-angle shot without its heavier connotations. Shoulder level shots are often used during conversations and frequently become an over-the-shoulder shot, or OTS. They can also emphasize a height difference, which translates visually to a power difference. In a romantic situation, the barely upturned eye line can enhance an affectionate glance. In our OTS video, we break down this scene from Westworld.
In the beginning, I imagined things would be perfectly balanced.
To illustrate how camera placement can connect or disconnect your characters. On to our next camera angle. The hip level shot. The hip level shot can be found in every genre, but it makes its home in the Western, often in conjunction with a cowboy shot, which we covered in episode 1, Shot Size. The principal reason for this is because gun holsters rest at hip height. Let's look at Sergio Leone's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Leone jumps between various hip-level holster shots and eye-level extreme close-ups. to create an iconic sequence that is as exciting as it is tense. Just below the hips is our next camera height, the knee level shot. The knee level shot, of course, sees the camera placed at a subject's knee height. Knee-high shots often find themselves doubling as low angles.
But this one is a madman.
A knee-level shot can be a great way to track through an environment following a character. And can be a good way to showcase character details that might be missed in a wider shot. Like in this moment from Forrest Gump. This perfectly chosen knee-level shot gives us a front row seat to his personal triumph. Run, Forrest, run. Now, our final category, the ground level shot. A ground level shot finds the camera placed all the way down on the ground, or sometimes even slightly below ground. Ground level shots often double as low angles if there is any degree of upward tilt. Shooting from ground level can be a stylish way to track a character's movement through a scene, or to capture details within the setting. The Shining features one of the most iconic ground level shots of all time. The shot is full of dynamic movement as we track behind Danny's tricycle. The iconic carpet pattern and engrossing sound design keep us intrigued by this lengthy shot. It's haunting, even before we get to room 237. So when you sit down to create your shot list, consider how the camera angle or height affects the messaging. Be creative with your choices. Don't just settle for what's expected. And don't worry about remembering all of these camera angles. If you're using our shot listing software, all of these options are built in. Mix and match, try different combinations of shot sizes, framing, and angles. Get creative. You can find a link to Studio Binder in the description. It's free to get started. You'll also find a link to this full shot list and storyboard. Use it as inspiration for your next shoot. In the next episode of the shot list, we'll turn attention to camera focus or depth of field and how they can be used to draw the audience in. That's it for now. It's time to take your shots to new heights.
All right. So, Elijah, you still with us? So basically, what I want to do is just show some camera shot examples in film.
This video, most important half of a person. We use this shot when. Hi, my name is Sarish Sudekran, and in this video, I'll go over 15 important shots that you should be aware of as a filmmaker. I'm going to break it down into 3 major portions: camera angles, shot sizes, and motion attributes. And each of those has 5 shots. At the end of this video, I'll provide a chart that'll make your life easier when you're trying to put together a shot. And I'll show you how. Let's begin with shot sizes. Probably the most important shot size ever is the close-up. You use a close-up when you want to fill the frame with a face. You might want to do that because you want to draw attention to the expression on the face. So facial features are more important than anything else at that moment. A variation of the close-up is the extreme close-up, where you probably chop off the top or bottom of the face to get even closer. In the other extreme, you have the long shot. The long shot shows the entire body of the subject, and you also get a sense of the location. Another reason why you might want to use a long shot is if you want to cover action. If somebody's running or fighting, you might want to see the entire body in motion. At the extreme, you have an extreme long shot in which the subject is even smaller relative to the frame. You might want to use that to make the subject look small in relation to their surroundings. In between these two shots, you have the medium shot, which is roughly half of a person. You use this shot when the person is either holding something or using something, or if body language is still important, but the person doesn't have to be mobile. Another way to distinguish between shot sizes is by the number of people in the shot. If you have one person, you can call it a single shot or a solo shot. If you have two, you call it a two shot. Three would be a three shot, and so on. The last is a point of view shot, where the camera points to whatever the character is looking at. So you want the audience to feel as if they were that person. So I've clubbed these 5 shots under shot size, but you can combine them. You can combine a 2 shot with a close up or a medium shot, and so on. The next important category is the camera angle. The most basic and simple camera angle is eye level, where the camera points straight ahead, and you typically use this to remain objective. You're not trying to manipulate the situation. When you want to manipulate the situation using camera angles, you can either go to a low angle, where the camera points up from a lower angle, and you use that to make the subject appear bigger or more dominating. On the other hand, you use a higher angle, where the camera points down from a high angle, and it makes the subject look diminutive and weak. Now, this is not etched in stone. You can break the rules here. An extreme case of the high angle will be a top angle or bird's eye view. So this is a special case where you want to show the topography of a location. Aerial shots are an extreme example of this as well. Next up, you have the Dutch angle or tilted shot, where the camera is not really level. An important use of this kind of shot is to draw attention to the fact that it's not a balanced frame. So something is literally off kilter. The last of the camera angles is the over the shoulder shot. Now, this is not strictly an angle, but it's a specialized shot that deserves its own place. Typically, an over the shoulder shot is confrontational by nature. So you have one person facing off with the other person. The last category is motion. The simplest type of motion is if you pan or tilt. That's when the camera stays in one place and it goes left or right as if you're observing a tennis match. The importance of this is the audience should feel like they are a spectator watching something objectively from a distance. If you want to move with the subject, you can either use a tracking shot, a crane, or a dolly. A tracking shot moves sideways, either left or right. A dolly moves front or back, and a crane goes up or down. They're all variations of the same kind of motion. They can be linear or they can be slightly curved, but the basic idea is you want to follow the action or follow the subject, and you want the audience to be more involved with the space and location. A variation of the dolly shot where you want to move in or move out, but you don't want to enter or leave the space, you use a zoom lens. Here, you just want to get closer without making an emotional statement. The next type of motion is random motion, where the camera just shakes around a certain point in a random manner. This is typically used to provide motion or energy to a shot to make it come alive. Some people find it distracting, some people find it energetic. The key thing to understand is all these rules can be broken. You can use motion in any way you want as long as the final objective is met, because ultimately a film is a combination of many edited shots. These are just basic guidelines for the beginner so they won't feel lost. The last kind of motion is slightly specialized. It's a 360-degree shot where you want to showcase the subject where the camera moves around the subject. The cool thing about motion is you have three dimensions to move the camera in, so you can compound motion. For example, you can add a dolly and a zoom to create a dolly zoom, which is a very popular shot. You can combine a crane with a 360-degree shot. And finally, you can combine camera angles, shot sizes, and motion in many ways to create a single take shot. Single take shots are the most complicated shots possible. They're a combination of many kinds of shots in one choreographed movement. So the actors have to move, the camera has to move. It's sort of like a dance, and it takes a lot of time and practice to pull off perfectly. So that's it for the basic camera shot sizes and angles. Here's a simple chart that I've created that will help you prepare your shots. You can find a full high quality version of this on Patreon. All you have to do is move from left to right, decide which camera angle you want, decide what shot size you want, and decide what kind of motion you need for the shot. When you do this many times, it becomes second nature. So I hope this brief video has helped you understand the different kinds of shot sizes that you need to be aware of. If I've left out any shots that you think are important, please let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. Bye now.
All right. So yeah, those are just some shots that I think are cool and I think should be utilized in different ways you can use it. And I like how they mentioned that motion is three-dimensional, so you can move X, Y, and Z. So let me see what they said. They said,
And a zoom to create a so you can cool thing about motion is you have three dimensions to move the camera in.
yeah, so they said how with motion you have three dimensions to move the camera in. So you can move it X, so you can move it X, Y, or Z. So you can compound it, meaning you can add things together. So you can do a zoom shot in a dolly, creating a dolly zoom. So I think that was a cool point that they mentioned. Um, um, but yeah, we'll talk more about this as we go on. But that's pretty much all I have today. Any questions, Elijah?
Apparently, I didn't have any questions about that, but all those videos you showed me, I got to admit those are pretty good, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah. Um, cool, cool. Okay. Well, glad you enjoyed them. And if there's no questions, we'll wrap up and then I'll see you next week.
Okay.
Evening, Elijah.
Hey, Elaine.
How's it going?
Everything's good.
Good, 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 good. Thank you for joining me tonight. We are going to, last week, we talked about the games and how they were suing a player for cheating in Fortnite. Um, Today, we are going to go over some of the trends in esports for this year, what we believe might be trends for this year. We're going to refer right back to that Esports and the Law newsletter through Hackney Publications, um, where the editor in chief is an attorney that practice sports and entertainment. And we also have Drexel University, another attorney, who is a professor, associate clinical professor at Drexel University. And now, I don't know if you recall, but some of our classes in the beginning, we talked about how esports has been really spreading like wildfire, how it has taken on a life of its own, and it's really expanding at the speed of light, so to speak. And so to have a professor at a university to be involved in creating a quarterly editorial for esports and the law is significant, because now we know and understand the um, how the sport has had an impact on education, and be it in high school, early education, or at the collegiate level. We talked before about how esports in college, you can now receive scholarships and join a collegiate team, and it's becoming uh, more pronounced in its industry, and we're trying to create that strong foundation. And so long term, we will have more and more students involved in esports. And we know that it could be a situation where we could receive a lot of funding, a solid source of funding. And so we want to make sure that um, we continue this growth, obviously, but at the collegiate level, it is important that we're now having more and more professors involved, retaining the knowledge, understanding the game, and building it up for the future of the sport. So, we're going to talk about some of the trends in esports from 2025. Going in 2024, it seemed like, the gaming industry was kind of stagnant. Other than kind of our big names like League of Legends, Valorant, and Fortnite, where they were booming, we didn't see kind of another big thing. Now, introduced in December of 2024, Marvel Rivals was introduced, which is a 6-on-6 third-person shooter game using Marvel Comics. And it's free to play. And we have seen an unprecedented amount of praise and success in the introduction of this game recently, right? There has been positive response to the character art. There has been a positive response to the fact that there was, not a lot of bugs or exploits as the game was launched. We were able to kind of play more seamlessly. Have you played Marvel Rivals, Elijah?
I think I did. I think I did for a little bit, and it was an okay game to play.
It was an okay game to play. Well, it is.
I haven't got the full experience yet.
Okay. Well, at this point in time, right now, it is receiving rave reviews. So we can kind of take a quick look into Marvel Rivals and see kind of what's all the rave about. Let me see. We'll watch a short video. Um, of its launch trailer, in case you haven't had the opportunity to see it. Let's see. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Eyes the lights gripping tightly, trapping all those fighting souls, fighting that. Press the wall to see you standing in my way. And remember, not in the place where you will fight. And I wonder, you tell me, like all these shadows looming, and yes, that's a nice to speak you out. The hearts that now we're not again. Do you remember who you really are? Yes, you were still the only one for me. This is your time. Yeah.
Right, how cool was that? I thought that was pretty cool. So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, the word on the street is that they believe we're thinking that maybe this video game can become a competitive esports title in 2025. And that is one prediction for 2025. We also have user generated content, which was on the rise in 2024. And user generated content used to be the exclusive province of Roblox, where users could create their own mini games and charge others Robux to play them, creating a nice little economy kind of within the game. Now, Fortnite has launched Fortnite Creative Mode several years ago. It was introduced in the Unreal Engine for Fortnite in 2023, and that really kind of opened up the floodgates for that kind of user generated content within Fortnite. Roblox currently has around 90 million daily active users, and Fortnite has 60 million. The bulk of those users are Generation Z, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha, who grew up with the games and very interested in playing with the concept of user generated content. So we believe, or at least, I'm sorry.
If it's overfacing the content, and sometimes it ain't easy, or you have to figure out how it's going to go out. Or
You do, you do. Did you know that there were this many users playing Fortnite? 60 million daily users, or 90 million daily active users that play Roblox. Roblox.
right?
That's a whole lot.
Yes, that's true.
But hey, because of this kind of user generated content, we believe that many brands are looking to launch user generated content within Roblox or Fortnite, including the one and only Snoop Dogg, Calvin Brodus. Snoop Dogg and his son Cordell launched Snoop Dogg Red versus Blue, which is a creative content within Fortnite in 2024, and it had great success. Have you seen that?
Mm,
No. Do you know
oh,
who Snoop Dogg is?
wait. Oh wait, I know Snoop Dogg.
The
Oh wait,
singer?
that's right. He used to be a famous iconic rapper.
Absolutely.
And don't get me wrong, the I just couldn't with this. Can you take a guess what I was thinking of at the moment?
What?
On this one episode of of ABC's game show, Celebrity Family Feud, the
Oh,
funniest answer he could think of is "Pie in the Horse."
I remember. I actually remember that. I actually remember that. How funny.
Yeah, she was
How
like,
funny.
"Pie in the what the heck did you say? Pie in
That,
the
yeah.
pie in the horse. Go,
Pie
go.
in the
Oh,
horse.
too funny. No wonder this show keeps playing on ABC.
Yeah. Who on earth thought that that's what he would say, right? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. But he created kind of this content within Fortnite, and it was very extremely successful.
Oh,
Um, yeah, and it was a collaboration with Death Row Records, which is the Death Row Games.
and,
Which
don't get me wrong. He had a game show called The Joker's Wild that used to be on TBS.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Yeah.
Um, so there is with this kind of content, this user generated content being so successful in the past, especially in 2024, seeing Snoop Dogg and his son being able to create that content and have this partnership with Fortnite. We believe that long term, another prediction was that a long term, we'll see uh, a significant amount of, if you want to do that, anyone who wants to kind of engage in this user generated content definitely is going to have their legal framework together in order to avoid intellectual property um, violations. But we might see an uptick in that kind of content. I'll show you really briefly what Snoop Dogg's content looked like, the trailer for his show. Here we go, which is pretty cool. So very short. Here we go. It's no problem. James is sitting in the playing bar. Also, Mm-mm. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. What else do we have? So prediction number 3 is that the integration of artificial intelligence. Now, we've seen how artificial intelligence has become very widespread, used very widely um, in almost every aspect of the world today. And so we can only imagine how its introduction into gaming is going to make the gaming industry more competitive, interesting, popular, right? We know that artificial intelligence or AI can be used in many, many ways in games. Um, Generating content is one of the obvious ways, but also using it to learn players' behaviors and make games progressively more difficult. We can also do that, right? There have been some complaints. We've noticed there were complaints in past publishers using learning technologies to kind of progressively increase the difficulty levels and drive players toward kind of purchasing downloadable content. And EA owns a patent for technology called dynamic difficulty adjustment that some players in FIFA alleged in 2021 was used in the game to influence kind of that downloadable content purchases. Um, but we want to look out for that one if we want to avoid that, but we do want to make games more interesting and more popular and even sometimes more difficult. So artificial intelligence may be a way for us to do that as we continue to use it in different ways in video games. Although there was an allegation against EA, Electronic Arts quickly came out with a statement that denied that the technology was ever used in FIFA, Madden, or NHL, and never ever will be. Um, who else? Warner Brothers has a patent on the Nemesis AI system, and that was found in 2014 in the Lord of the Rings game. Have you played that game before?
I haven't played any of the Lord of the Rings
You
games.
haven't? Okay, no worries. Um, we'll do a little, I'll show a little videos quickly, briefly, and you can see what it looks like. Um,
Okay.
all right. We see here how um, artificial intelligence has been used at least since 2014 through in the Lord of the Rings game, and we know that Warner Brothers still has a patent on that, and patents last. Do you remember how long patents last? 20 years.
Years.
2020.
Okay.
So I'll show a brief video about what it looks like. But the prediction for 2025 is that we'll continue to see kind of these types of artificial intelligence technologies creep into video games, really, whether we want to or not, to advance our technologies, right? I'm going to show you a little bit about the Nemesis AI system, what that looks like. What is this? Let's see. I'm gonna show you a short video. Here we go. Now we're talking about the patent that Warner Brothers was able to secure and why it's so important.
We're in charge now. Anyone have a problem with that? We're in charge now. Anyone have a problem with that?
York's numbers have swelled beyond count. They're preparing for another push. No one's seen your father since the last battle. I have men looking for him. What new devilry is this? The Witch King himself comes to negotiate.
My father's place.
I will search. And so always to be joy with people returns their good feelings. All masses and that stuff suffers. You
That
understand?
the Uruks are incapable of mercy. That my father may already be dead.
Ignore their taunts. We mustn't allow them.
The Uruks love spectacle. If we can distract them in the arena, we can sneak into their camp and find my father. Can I ask this of you?
Give them a show to remember. Try not to kill him too quickly. They seem to like their champion's chances, and it must be said that he has size on his side. True, but you and I have him outnumbered. Welcome to the arena, man swine. The crowd screams for bloody spectacle, and you will give it to them.
Look, that's the Lord.
What did you hope for? His designs are unaltered. He has plans for your city, man. Plans indeed for you.
If there's one gameplay innovation that I think deserves another look, it's the Nemesis system, which first appeared in the 2014 game Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. At its most basic, it's a villain generator, capable of populating Mordor with a handful of procedurally generated bad guys. Each one has its own name, look, gameplay traits, and personality, which is revealed in taunting one-liners before combat.
I wonder which of us will kill you first.
But at its best, and especially so in the sequel Shadow of War, it's a full-on story generator, which is able to spin unique and highly personal narratives from your relationships with these orcs. It's a pretty incredible feat of design and engineering. We've seen story generation stuff in games like RimWorld and Crusader Kings, but in a real-time action game with blockbuster graphics, it's unheard of. It's also something I've talked about a number of times on this channel, but I've never really dug into the specifics of how it works. To be honest, I've always been intimidated by the sheer complexity of the thing. That is, until now. It's about time I finally gave it a go. So, hi, I'm Mark Brown, this is Game Maker's Toolkit, and here's how the Nemesis system creates stories. A quick note before I start. To save time and make things easier, I'm mostly going to talk about these two games as a single entity, which I'll just call Mordor. It's worth noting that Shadow of War makes massive changes and improvements to the system, but the broad strokes do apply to both games. If I had to choose an analogy for the way Mordor tells stories, I'd go with improvisational theatre, where unscripted stories spontaneously evolve as the performance goes on, and especially the rule yes and, which is about always accepting your partner's prompt and building on it. And that's exactly how it works in Mordor. The player does something, the game recognizes it, and builds on it. So you might run away from a battle with an orc captain to save your skin, and get called a coward in a future encounter.
Not letting you run this time. Oh, he's gonna finish it.
Or you might put a spy into the enemy's ranks, only for the next orc you meet to say,
We know you planted a spy. Don't know who he is yet, but we'll just torture maggots until we find him.
The way this works is that the game is always secretly cataloguing your interactions with the game, and the orcs can then reference this list in order to choose the most interesting line of dialogue at the start of your next encounter. And that's really clever, because it means the way you communicate to the game, the way you make your improvisational suggestions, is through the most basic actions of play. Things like kill, flee, injure, heal, or gather intel. The things you're doing anyway in order to play the game get used by the Nemesis system as a jumping-off point for the narrative. But this can also go the other way, with the orcs giving prompts, and hopefully the player will take the bait and build on the story themselves. Take this Olog called Arcaro, who beat me to a pulp, bent down, picked up my sword, and broke it. I guess I'll be tracking him down. Okay, so that's the basics. But this left developer Monolith Productions with a problem. In a game that's all about death and violence, how do you make these stories last longer than a single encounter? You can't have improv if your partner is dead, after all. The solution was to find ways for an encounter to end that don't involve death. So, for one, the player is always able to run away from a battle, and is often encouraged to do so because it's difficult to recover health in the middle of combat. Some orcs also retreat when their life is in danger. Also, right at the moment of death, it's possible for the encounter to go a very different way.
I can't go down like this. I won't go down like this.
A downed orc might defy death and have a tricky escape. Or if the player is about to die, the orc might decide to just humiliate them and walk away. Take Marku, a wiry little archer who keeps downing me with his poisonous arrows but always stops short of finishing the job.
Get up, man, filth. I want a victory, not a mercy killing you. Experience to kill you like this. Come on, show me some pride of Gondor, or whatever you men are always going on about.
But even if Talion does actually die, that's not the end. In almost every game, the player's death is a non-canonical error that gets erased when you rewind to a previous save point. It's rare to find games where the player's demise is actually weaved into the narrative in an interesting way. But in Mordor, protagonist Talion is a grave walker, a man stuck between life and death, which gives him the power to endlessly come back to life, like someone respawning in a multiplayer match. And this allows for a key narrative trope: revenge. Oof. Well, he won't be a problem anymore. Monolith says it was inspired by the Burnout games, where you can get wrecked by rival racers and then you're dropped straight back onto the track so you can hunt down that car and enact some sweet justice. It's only because crashing is not considered a failure in Burnout that this sort of story can happen. The studio was also inspired by the kill cam in Call of Duty games, where you get to see the person who just killed you and then can respawn into the map and hunt them down. In fact, a lot of Mordor's design was about trying to replicate multiplayer relatedness with computer-controlled characters. And it's not just Talion who can respawn. Every enemy you slay has a small chance to cheat death and reappear later in the game, perhaps with injuries, scars, and prosthetics, which is another chance for the game to reflect the player's actions back on them. Like, for example, maybe I was being a bit hasty when I said Arkoro the Swordbreaker wouldn't be a problem, because half an hour later, look who showed up in the middle of a fight.
I should thank you. Whatever magics you used when you took my head will not allow me to die. Getting killed by you was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Gulp. Put all of this together, plus some other possible outcomes that I'll speak about later, and we can see that there's many ways for the relationship between Talion and an orc to go forward, from humiliation to fleeing to cheating death. And so, whatever way the encounter ends, every time you meet this orc again, the process repeats, but now with a memory of your previous run-ins to reference and build the story further. Something else happens when an enemy kills you. They level up, they gain new strengths and shed old weaknesses, they get emboldened, and they often challenge a bigger orc for their position. You see, it would get boring if you just kept meeting the same orcs again and again without any change or growth in the relationship. So the Nemesis system needs some kind of framework for these stories to grow on. And in Mordor, Monolith used one that's familiar and easily understandable to anyone who's worked in a job or been in a prison gang: the hierarchy. In Shadow of War, every orc exists in a top-down organization of Overlord, a bunch of war chiefs, the captains, and the soldiers, who are just typical disposable NPC enemies. Though if they kill you, they have every chance of getting promoted to captain themselves. Killing Talion can make the enemy rise up through the ranks, but if you shame a war chief, they'll get demoted back down to captain. And it's not all about Talion. Orcs are given randomly generated missions that automatically resolve after a certain amount of time and can lead to promotion, demotion, and death, causing the balance of power to organically shift as you play. So if Talion's immortal nature lends itself to stories of vengeance, the hierarchical framework leads to different story tropes, such as fall from grace and rags to riches. Like in my game, how Marku, the humiliating orc captain, decided to finally finish the job and use his newfound status to overthrow the overlord for top position. Which is quite the move up. That's like me getting 1 million subscribers and then submitting my resume to become the CEO of YouTube. But it also means that Marku is now absolutely untouchable unless I lead a full-on assault of his heavily guarded fortress. The orcs can also have other relationships, like a captain being a bodyguard to a war chief, or one orc being a devoted blood brother to another.
I was my blood brother slain by such a useless little cat.
And later in the game, you get a chance to make your own relationships by recruiting orcs onto your side of the war. So after Marku became Overlord, I had an idea. No matter how many times I killed Arkaro the Stitch, he kept coming back, this time with a massive iron helmet holding his head together.
Is that surprise I see on your face? Did you really think you killed me? Don't make me laugh. It really tear my stitches.
And it was at this point that I realized that me and the Stitch have more in common than I first thought. We're two immortal souls, trapped in an endless battle of death and respawning. And so if I'm going to build an army to take down Marku the Humiliator, perhaps we should actually work together.
I swear allegiance to you.
Now, I'll admit that the relationship between Talion and his followers isn't quite as well defined as Talion and his rivals. It is, after all, called the Nemesis system. So a recruited captain will effectively leave the map and may have very little interaction with Talion from that point onwards. It can be as much of an endpoint as the orc's death. But there are some interesting possibilities. A recruit may decide to betray you and return to the enemy's side. You might install a spy in the enemy's ranks, only for him to be found out and executed. And a favoured follower might show up in a clutch moment to save you from certain death.
That's what take you today. Just as it cannot take me.
Thanks, buddy. Whatever the case, these different relationships help flesh out stories because they force the narrative to grow beyond simple one-on-one tales between Talion and a single orc. Instead, it creates a weaving matrix of different relationships and dependencies that can lead to more exciting stories. So hopefully you can now see why I make the link between Mordor and improv. In most video game stories, the narrative is entirely predetermined. Even those games with branching paths and multiple endings are all plotted out ahead of time, like a choose-your-own-adventure book. The player then navigates their way through this scripted story. But in Mordor, the story evolves unpredictably because it's entirely based on your interactions with these orcs. It's constructed at runtime, encounter by encounter, using your interactions as narrative brickwork. Systems like cheating death and humiliation allow the stories to be longer. The hierarchy allows the cast of characters to grow and change. And relationships between the different orcs creates a web of interlocking characters. But even though we've now got a pretty solid system that allows for stories to happen, how does Monolith make sure that those stories are actually any good? First, it's important that you can actually remember and distinguish between these different orcs. You'll encounter around 100 captains over the course of a game, and so it's vitally important that the player is able to keep track of their relationships with the key players. An orc might remember you, but you don't always remember them. To make this work, the orcs need to have really strong personalities. They need to be visually interesting and have unique traits, like the singer.
I sing this song with all my breath. Take heed, for visitor lewd ends with your death.
Or the poet.
Your fate just went from bad to worse. You face an orc who speaks in verse.
Or the obsessed.
Oh, I don't think I've ever seen such a beautiful corpse. This is a corpse you could love and love and love.
These orcs reference their unique trait constantly to keep it memorable. So you might not remember his name, but you will remember that guy who keeps talking about branding. And to keep it consistent, the game defines the orc's identity first, and then makes everything else support that, such as the weapon it uses, the outfit it wears, the choices it makes in combat, and even its mannerisms, like this goddamn singing orc who constantly says, Because while Mordor is highly systemic and makes significant use of procedural generation, there's still a lot of carefully handcrafted content in there which helps certain orcs become highly memorable characters. The Stitch, after all, is just a handcrafted character who may appear when an Olog cheats death. But the Stitch could be a captain, a war chief, a spy, a follower, or any other role. There are simply hundreds of voice lines for each orc to account for every eventuality. Second, the game needs to create strong emotional connections to these orcs. They're not just characters, they're rivals and nemeses. This connection is usually forged when you die. The kill animations are aggressive and painful. The orc insults you with taunts after your death, and we see the orc celebrating your demise and being rewarded with a promotion. They may even change their name to denote the way they murdered you. If this isn't enough, you're encouraged to get revenge for gameplay purposes, because killing an orc who murdered you leads to way better loot. Now, these stories can be filled with really cool moments, things like an orc cheating death, repeatedly humiliating you, betraying your trust, or becoming a deranged, babbling weirdo. These can be really powerful bits of narrative, but only when they're rare occurrences. If it happens over and over, it becomes rote, predictable, and just another gameplay mechanic. So these events are designed to be uncommon. According to Monolith, in a typical playthrough of Shadow of War, the vast majority of orcs will never cheat death, meaning that these truly nemesis-style relationships feel rare and memorable. To make this happen, well, almost everything in Mordor has a random chance to occur. If you're downed, there's an invisible die roll to see if a follower orc will save your life. And simply put, all of the most surprising interactions are given an incredibly low chance of ever happening. And going further, some events, like certain transformations, can only happen once and then are locked from ever happening again in that playthrough, to ensure that those moments are truly surprising. Ideally, we want these rare occurrences to happen to the orcs we actually know and remember. So, you need to know about a secret statistic that every orc carries with them, the player interaction score, which ticks up every time you re-encounter the same orc. The higher the PIS, the more likely that the orc will cheat death, survive in battles with other orcs, and more. And so, in play, it means that the orcs you know the best, the ones who have killed you multiple times or have shown up again and again, are the ones most likely to stick around and to have the key roles in the story going forward. Of course, it wouldn't be good if an orc cheated death, but spawned in some obscure part of the map and you never saw them again. So to make sure those cast members stay relevant, Monolith cheats with how orcs spawn and will allow a key rival or nemesis to teleport in at the most inopportune moment. Orcs can even travel between the different regions in rare circumstances, so characters you had a strong relationship with in one part of the game will come back in another. There are even more secret stats behind the scenes to help drive drama and bring balance to stories. For example, if you just kill or recruit every orc you encounter, it's likely that your story is getting a bit one note. So, design director Bob Roberts says, "That's a knob we can turn. If you're doing too well, maybe somebody should piss you off and betray you and give you a revenge target to go after." Though I'm not sure how aggressive this balancing is. There were times when I had to manually increase the difficulty level because the game was just too easy and my stories were becoming stagnant. And finally, Monolith knows when to step back. Ultimately, much of
There was a lot of content, Elijah, huh? But this is an example of how AI and Nemesis system works. Some of the, pros and cons, how we may appreciate the storyline, but again, some simple adjustments or manual adjustments were still required in order to fully enjoy the system to ensure that you were getting stories that you were both interested in and well, that you were more and more interested in. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
Okay.
What's going on, Elijah?
Oh, hey, Aramis.
Hey, what's going on? Hey, Elaine.
Hey, I was talking and I was on mute.
Hilarious.
Oh, sorry, that happens all the time. But I was just wrapping up with Elijah as we went over some of the 2025 changes or 2025, what we can expect to see or what we may see in 2025, including that Marvel Rivals video game. We're hoping it becomes a competitive video game, just like Fortnite or League of Yeah, see, there we go. There we go. We see that competition, that competitive esports titles. It had fallen flat. We didn't see anything new to kind of write home about in 2024, but 2025 looks like it's going to be the year for Marvel Rivals. So we're pretty excited to see what's next. And then we talked about the user generated content that we oftentimes see in Fortnite, and Fortnite launched that Fortnite creative mode, and it's also used in Roblox. So we've seen partnerships just like the one with Snoop Dogg, Calvin Brodus, and his son Cordell. They launched that Snoop Dogg Red versus Blue, and because a lot of gamers are Gen Z and Generation Alpha age range, we see that they're really clinging on to this user generated content type of gameplay. They really enjoy it. We have 60 million users who actively use Fortnite daily and 90 million who use Roblox. And so this don't be surprised if we see more user generated content. Even if there's some intellectual property challenges, we will likely see more and more collaborations. And last but not least, we will see how AI has an influence on gaming as it does with every other aspect of the world at this moment. How we'll continue to use AI to enhance gamers' experiences and what that looks like long term. Okay. Do you have any questions, Elijah? I didn't go back on mute. No, I didn't. All right. All right. Well, Elijah, you have about 5 minutes before Aramis. He's already here. So you guys can take it from here, but I'll give you about 5 minutes of a break, and then you guys can have a good night.
All right, Elaine. Thanks.
You're welcome. See you guys later.
See you later. Have a great night.
Good night. Bye.
All right, Elijah. I'm gonna give you a few minutes. Go ahead and get some water. Use the bathroom if you have to. And then we'll get started in a few minutes.
Sounds good.
All right, Elijah, let's get started. So, good evening. Let me turn my camera on. So, good evening. This is intro to IT funding. I'm sorry, not intro. My name is Aramis Singleton, and this is the first class of the IT fundamental class. My name is Aramis Singleton, and today we're going to start our IT class. So, what is IT fundamentals? Well, I have a PowerPoint I'm going to start, and I'm going to show you. So, just give me um, a couple of seconds here so I can pull that right up. Here we go. So, yes, IT fundamentals. So the music class is over with for this cohort. What we're going to do is at the end of the cohort, we're going to play everybody beats productions and everything so they continue working on it and everything. And then at the end of the cohort period, the last class that we will have on the Tuesday class, we will play the productions and then we'll do a test on IT fundamentals, right? So today lecture will be about the IT terminology. So we're going to go over a few important words. We're going to do learn about what CMD is, the command prompt and everything, and go from there. And then next week we're going to have like a part two, and then we're going to talk about like the PC parts and everything, some which will be in the terminology list that I have set up. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is IT fundamentals, right? So IT fundamental will be the start of your IT career, right? It's to learn the basis of the IT field overall, the start of your pathway into IT, to learn the terminology, and to also learn troubleshooting other tips and tricks that you would need to pick up along the way. So IT fundamentals is the very basic start of the IT class, right? Period. It's the very, very start. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's the very, very start of the IT career field, period, right? It's the very start of it. What this class is going to do is pretty much make a base of you absorbing IT things, right? So you're going to learn about IT troubleshooting, things that you would learn if you were specifically wanting to be IT help desk like myself. So before I get too ahead of myself, let me tell you my background. So my background in IT started when I was a very young kid, or say like around 8, 9 years old, 10. I was fixing like old VCRs and TVs, video game consoles. From there, my mom put me in classes learning about IT, just the basic forms of it. Put me in a bunch of workshops as I was getting older in my teenage years. Um, from there, I went to school for it, earned the Marine Valley Community College, got my certificates and my degree, and I'm working on my CompTIA Plus cert right now, so I should be having that. Just a lot of money, but the very important thing to have. But I've been in the IT field for, I want to say, 15 plus, 20 plus years. I'm 36, 37, I'll be 38 this year. So I've been in the IT field for a very, very long time. Um, I'm I do IT help desk. I'm an IT technician, so I do hardware, software fixes. I also have my own side business, Singleton Tech Services, where I pretty much fix people computers, laptops. I build PCs. So you want a custom PLC, you had to buy the parts, but I will build it for you and everything and get that all set up. I also, look at like people's phones. I also look at sometimes consoles, if I can fix it. Um, and I also build servers. I have also started building servers, I want to say 2, 3 years ago. Building home servers for people. I tell them what they need, what they can get, and then I set them up from there. So I definitely know about what I'm talking about, the IT. I'm also the IT administrator for C.L.I.C Services. So that's my other title that I have here, as along with being an instructor for the music production, IT fundamentals, and streaming coach. I'm also the IT specialist, IT administrator here at C.L.I.C. But pretty much what this class is going to help you is to get you started on the IT field. It's going to get you started to understand what IT is and how you can use this to start your career. So if you want to do IT technician help desk, this class will definitely help you with that. If you want to do something like coding, same thing. If you even want to do data analyst, which is still IT, right? So learning things like SQLs and really understanding Excel spreadsheets and getting yourself in that, this will help you start that path. So this is kind of like just beginning path and just choose your adventure after this class. So Let's go ahead and get started with IT terminology. So let's go ahead and get started with IT terminology. So right here I have a list. If you can write it down, Elijah, this list. If you can write it down. If not, then I can email it to you. So just send me your email, and then I will email you this list. These are just some of the words that we're going to go after over the course of this class today. And tomorrow, I mean not tomorrow, but next week we're going to do part 2 and some other things. But let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing you have is the CPU, for your central processing unit. Your CPU is a piece of computer hardware that retrieves and stores and processes and execute instructions. So think of the CPU as the brains of the computer. So your CPU, or your central processing unit, specifically is just this. It would be your processor, right? So just do Intel the i7, right? I'm sorry, not 17, but i7, right? This would be your processor. If you want a better picture, this right here. These right here are processors, right? Your processor is kind of like the brain. It get all the information from the other parts of the computer, it stores it, it processes the information and put it back out so it can execute whatever process that it needs to process, right? So for example, you doing something that's open in Chrome. This minute you hit the Chrome icon, it's gonna the RAM and everything is gonna send everything to the processor, the CPU. It's gonna store it, it's gonna retrieve it, it's gonna process that information, execute it, and send it back out so it can open Chrome, right? So if I wanted to open something like my file explorer, boom, right? The processor just the minute I clicked on there, it sent information to the processor. It went ahead and processed that information. It executed that command that I wanted to do, and it opened up my file explorer. Right, that's how that works. Right, the CPU is very important. You can also have different types of CPUs. Right, so this right here is an Intel. It's an i7 core, so it has 7 cores. You also have like so many threads within a processor. You also can have something like a Xeon processor, right? So your Xeon processor are more so used for, there we go. Your Xeon processors are more so used for servers, right? Because they have so many cores, like this is a 20-core processor right here, so many threads, just because it's doing so many things, right? Servers can do so many things. It can store information. It allows you to store information on the server that you can easily access if you have the right information. Also, you can do things like virtualization, where you can set up a virtualization. So many of them where it has like an environment for Windows where you can go and play in it, or you can legit use it to access certain information that you can only access if you was on site. Let's say you needed to go out of state for a conference or something, and the job gave you the information to access the server, the virtualization server, so you can access whatever information you needed from whatever files. You would need a processor like this. So you have Intel, and then you also have AMD. Um, the Ryzen series is very, very good. The Ryzen 5, the Ryzen 7, the Ryzen 9, the Threadripper, which is pretty much the equivalent of the Intel Xeon processors. Very, very important, but you would definitely need this to start your PC. After that, you would have something like your GPU, right? Your graphics processing unit, right? Or better yet, you would know it as a graphics card. So a GPU, or a graphics processing unit, is a piece of computer hardware that runs graphics on a device, right? Well, your graphics card, right? So we all know about graphics card, right? You know about the NVIDIA, your 3080s, your 4090s stuff, and not a new one. I think it's like the 50 series, like the 5070, 5080 series, right? Or you can go Team Red AMD, and you can get the Radeon 5700 XT. I think that's what they have right now, like 5700 XT, or the old school RX 580 graphics cards, right? And you have the new kids on the block, Intel, right? Intel now have dedicated graphics cards, the Arc series, right? You got the B570s, the B580s, really good graphics cards, very, very affordable, right? Really good in that budget territory. Same thing with AMD, but you get more bang for your buck if you went with the AMD. NVIDIA, still pretty much the kings of graphics card for the most part. Well, I would say they have more competition now. They definitely have more competition. I'm not gonna say they're the king, they're still at the top, but definitely AMD has something to say. If you want to see a picture of a graphics card, Let's go NVIDIA 3070, right? This is a graphics card right here. So you just plug that into your motherboard into the slots, the PCIe slots, right? You would plug it in the PCIe slot. You would plug a cord from your power supply into the graphics card, and that was this is what will allow you to see your PC, right? Like this will allow you to see your PC to interact with it and also play games at very very high levels of graphic levels, right? So something like a 3070 can get you to 1080p, maybe even 1440p, depending on what game you're getting. If you get the higher end models, of course, so like the 4080s and now the 550 series, you can probably do some 4K game if you have the right amount of RAM, along with the right CPU, the processor, right? You need all of them things working in cohesion to get the most power you could out of your graphics card, right? So you just can't go and buy a 50 series graphics card or the 5700 XT and expect to get 4K gaming. No, you have to really do your research. You need to get the right amount of RAM, right? And you also need to get the right amount of RAM, but the right speed of that RAM. And you also need to get the right um, CPU, right? So for something like a 500 series, you would need something like, I would say the i7K series where you can overclock. And then for the RAM, 32 gigs of RAM, maybe 64 gigs of RAM at a very high speed, like 33 megahertz speed, which is very, very fast RAM, GDDR6, very, very fast RAM. So that would get you to 4K, things like that. A lot of money, but this is why PC building is, it's easy once you understand it, but it's definitely fun, right? Because it's a lot of mix and match, right? You may not get 4K, but you can get something like 2K. You can get 1440p, 120 hertz, right? Which is 120 frames per second. But all that also depends on your graphics card with other factors, right? But that would be your GPU. Now, after that, the terminology would go to IT or information technology, right? It's just the development and the use of computer system, network to store and manage or retrieve information, right? So information technology is pretty much just the overall development and use of computer system and networks, right? This is what you're learning when you're becoming an IT technician. You're becoming a data analyst. You're becoming a coder, like Sandy, right? All of these things work hand in hand with each other, right? Because if um, you need IT technicians, help desk to be able to troubleshoot issues that people don't have time for, right? Hey, my PC is not connecting to my printer, or hey, I can't get this SQL working right, or hey, can we fix this in the back end? I need somebody to code. I need this fixed in the back end. So all these things work hand in hand. Then you have your LAN or your local area network. A local area network consists of a series of computers linked together to form a network and a relatively contained location such as home or office buildings. So LANs is very, very important. This is one thing you would definitely learn as an IT technician because you need to learn about networking, right? So what a LAN does is it connects all the computers, all the printers on just one network, right? So let's think of an office building, right? Think of an office building. Office buildings, you may need to print something to someone on the third floor, you on the first, or you may need to print something on the first floor, you on the fifth. As long as you on the same LAN, local area network, you can do that. It works through a series of having these things called switches, which is a small box where a lot of Ethernet ports can go into. You would just have one that would connect to the internet, or it would connect to an intranet, which is pretty much a version of the internet that doesn't connect to the outside world. Everything is kind of contained within your LAN. So a lot of hospitals use this, a lot of local area networks, or wide area networks, which is a terminology we'll learn in a few minutes. Schools, a lot of businesses, warehouses, they all uses that because it makes life way easier. So I need something printed to, one of my coworkers, I can go ahead, load the file up, and when I go to the printer, I can be like printer third floor, and I can call him or send an email, whatever, and be like, "Hey, I printed the information you needed. It's printed out right now," and then they'll understand, get up and go to the printer and pick it up. So that's how that would work, right? And then you have your OS, your operating system, right? Actually, put that right there, right? You have your OSs. right? You have your OS or your operating system, right? Your operating system connects computer hardware to applications and manages all memory and processes. Some examples include Linux, Apple, Mac OS or and iOS also, and Microsoft Windows. So those are pretty much the big three, right? So you all know about Windows. I'm pretty sure that you're using a Windows laptop right now for the most part. Some may be using OS, Mac OS, even iOS, and the very, very few amount will be maybe using Linux. You also have Chrome OS, Android, which pretty much are the same thing, but you have that too. Some you may be using the Chromebook and using Chrome OS or Android, right? The operating system is how you get all your hardware to work, right? Because your applications or your operating system, it has the code to send to your processor to make everything go, right? When you hit that power button, it boots on, it goes into the BIOS for a hot second, and then it goes and boot and load up Windows, right? Windows 11 for everybody, or it may boot into Mac OS. I'm getting what the flavor they're on right now, or even Linux, right? If you use Linux, right? You have things like Steam OS, which is a fork of Linux. You have Penguin, not Penguin, I can't think of it right now, but you have Linux, like the brand, Debian. I'm sorry, Debian. You have Debian, which is a fork of Linux. We have so many different forks of Linux. It's crazy. So, but Linux is like a lower level OS. When I say lower level, but it's not as wide known as the big two, which would be Mac OS and Windows. Linux is right there. Linux is used on like Steam OS, like the Steam Deck. It uses Linux. They have a bunch of other like handheld PCs that use Linux. Um, I think the Switch uses Linux. I think the Switch uses Linux or it uses Android. I don't know. I got to be sure, but I know using one of those. And Linux is very very flexible, right? It is very flexible. It really work on a lot of command line prompting. Some can have like icons and um, covers that can make it look like Windows or Mac OS. It's very, very flexible. I have a CyberDeck Linux machine at home that I use. So if I need to force myself into something, if I have to, I can pull that out and pretty much force Linux to work with Windows to pretty much break me to get into something. But Linux is very, very helpful. Um, Windows is the big king. You feel like the big daddy of them all because everybody have a Windows, a Windows machine, a laptop, a tablet, not tablet, but a laptop or a PC. Everybody still use Windows. It's the it uses 886 architecture. Everybody just have it, right? It just make things so much easier because it's scalable, and that's one of the pros and cons. Because you have Mac OS, right? Which is really, really smooth, right? It's a really smooth OS. You can do it all, right? You can work on media, like work on editing media by music or film or videos, and you can load up a lot of crazy stuff and it can handle like a champ, albeit that you have the hardware with it, like you have 64 gigabytes of RAM and you have a very strong processor. I know now they're using that M series processor. Before they was using, I want to say Intel. They were using Intel processors before they started making their own. They're making an M series, which is very efficient, power wise, and it can also put a lot of powerful, like do a lot of powerful things, like with games and rendering and stuff like that. And it can also handle graphics cards now, so that's a big plus. The reason why Mac OS and iOS is so smooth is because they don't have a lot of companies making MacBooks, right? Apple make their MacBooks just like they make their iPhones. You don't see like a TCL iPhone version, or you don't see something like a LG MacBook. It's Apple, Apple, Apple. So everything kind of stays. Everything for the most part stay the same. Yes, you can get more RAM, and you can get a better solid state drive. You can get a better graphics card. But for the most part, it's still going to run the same across all the board. With Windows, on the other hand, you have so many different brands. You have Dell, you have HP, you have Acer, you have Asus, you have Windows himself, Microsoft himself. It's so many different versions or different brands that's making laptops, and they have to scale it to the certifications because just like with your CPU, you can't get a cheap CPU where it's a dual core processor, which haven't really been in demand since I want to say the early aughts, right? So like think of 2000 to 2010, the dual core processor that was really in demand. You think of like a Pentium processor. I'm pretty sure you can walk right now into a Walmart and buy $100 laptop, and it'll have a dual core processor. It's going to run very, very slow or all in one. I personally don't recommend those, but I get it if you're in a tight situation like you're in college and you just need something that can do word processing, like using, Word, Microsoft Word. You can search the web and do research and write your papers. Then I understand, right? But if you have a little bit of money, I would say you go for something a little bit better than some dual word processors. But that's why the OS isn't across the board smooth like Mac OS, because Mac OS have one developer that makes all their hardware, which is Apple, while Windows license out Microsoft. Where Microsoft licenses out Windows to be put on multiple laptops of different brands. Like I said, you got LG, you got Acer, you have Asus, you have Dell, HP, so many, right? Then you have your RAM or your random access memory, right? So you build the PC, you need your CPU, and we already established your CPU or your central processing unit is your processor. Let's say you get you an i5 processor, and then you got to get your GPU, right? Because you need your graphics card so you can see everything, unless you have a processor, and you back up real quick, unless you have a processor that have integrated graphics. So integrated graphics are graphics that are built onto your processor. So if you went to the store and you was like, hey, can I just get a Ryzen 5 processor, right? They would probably just give you a Ryzen 5500, right? And my son did this and it was very funny. So you like, can I get a Ryzen 5 5500? Yeah. So you go, they give you this 6 core, 12 threads unlocked. It's great. Issue is though, it doesn't have integrated graphics. When you built your PC and you ready to install Windows and everything, and you press the power button, you have a blank screen, and you like, why do I have a blank screen? It's because it doesn't have integrated graphics, right? So most laptops have integrated graphics, right? So if you have the Ryzen, I believe the Ryzen series, I think it's like the X. The X is what has the integrated graphics built in. The Radeon graphics, I believe, is the Radeon graphics. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's the U series. So the 55, so the U series, not the K, the U series have, or the X, the U series have the integrated Radeon graphics, right? So you don't need to buy a graphics card. You can get away with using a Radeon graphics, integrated graphics on the processor to boot up your PC, to do your web searching, to watch videos, do all of that. And you play certain games at very high, no, they say very high, but high settings and high to medium settings. But if you definitely want to play your video games at a higher graphical level, you would definitely need a graphics card. Now the X series, I'm gonna go back to the processor real quick, but the X series though, with Ryzen, it means you can overclock it. So you still need to buy a graphics card, but the Ryzen X series allows you to overclock your processor. What that means is you can feed it a little bit more power, and it can work a little bit more better. It can produce a lot of good results. You have to do some trial and error with overclocking. With Intel, it would be the K series. So if you got an i7 K series, that allows you to overclock. Yep, that allows you to overclock. So you see the K. So the K series for overclocking for Intel, and the X series for Ryzen allows you to overclock. Both allows you to overclock, give a little bit more power, literally get a little bit more voltage, so you can put out a bit more amazing results when you overclock. With the integrated graphics, it's the G. So the integrated graphics, you would need the G series. But you need your RAM, right? You're gonna need RAM, or random access memory. Um, your RAM is a form of computer storage that can be rewritten multiple times. What that means is Now, this is your RAM, right? This is just a picture of a RAM just showing you right now. But what your RAM does, it allows you, let me bring that back up, terminology. What that allows you with your RAM is it allows you to have storage saved in your RAM. Now, you can't save it yourself, but your PC does. So I'm pretty sure you on some type of browser, like using Chrome or using Firefox, Opera, or even Edge, and you go to a lot of websites a lot. So, for example, I go to YouTube a lot. I go to wrestling websites like WrestleZone and Cage Side Seats a lot, and it's gonna, I go there a lot. I go there every day, multiple times a day. What your RAM does is that it's going to take the cookie and or that website information and store it on your RAM. Or let's say you open up FL Studio a lot. You open up let's say Pro Tools. We're gonna say Pro Tools. You open up Pro Tools and a bunch of other things. It's going to just store all the information from those programs that you use a lot into your RAM. So you need to go back instead of you going into your processor all the time, which it still is, but just not as much. It's going to go to your RAM first because it's going to have all the information stored so it can boot up fast, right? So let's say you play, you've been playing Halo. I'm pretty sure at this point your PC knows that you're going to be playing Halo at a certain time. So it's going to have that stored in your RAM. So when you play, it's going to just boot right up into Halo, right? You're going to open up Xbox, you're going to hit, play, it's going to boot right up and everything move a bit faster because it's learning. That's what your RAM is. With your RAM, you have different speeds, right? I think the lowest is like 1,333, I believe, megahertz is the start of the run that can be very, very slow. And then from there you can go up to I want to say 5,333 grand, which is pretty fast right there. I think it's like DDR, yeah. I think we're in like DDR6 right now, I want to say. Um, but that's what that is, right? Your RAM is definitely important for you to use because it helps your PC go faster. It doesn't allow your processor or even your hard drive or solid state, well, not hard drive, but your solid state drive to do all the work. The RAM take a lot of that load off of both, right? Take the load off of your processor and the load off of your solid state drive, and it helps them do, it helps them relieve all of that so they all can do the work so it can be more efficient. The more RAM you have and the faster RAM you have, the more efficient your PC will be. You won't use as much power, you won't use as much electricity. Well, I understand as much electricity, but you won't use as much power like you usually do because you have these other components working hand in hand, sync to sync. So your RAM is definitely very, very important. These days, when I get customers and they want to build a PC or they're looking for a laptop, I suggest to them like, hey, 16 gigs of RAM is pretty, is okay. But eventually, especially I get a lot of clients that do a lot of film editing, like multimedia editing. They do film and music and everything. I tell them 32 gigs or up with RAM. And for the speed, I definitely suggest the 33 megahertz speed of RAM that they would need, right? So RAM is definitely very, very important. So let's go back to terminology. So you have troubleshooting, which is we are going to learn in class. With troubleshooting is the process of identifying problems with a network through a rigorous and repeatable process. It is solving those problems using testable methods, right? So processing is pretty much trying to figure out what the problem is. So for example, your laptop is not connected to the printer. Okay, was it working today? Yes, it just started doing this. Okay, when did it stop? Like an hour ago. I used it this afternoon. I'm gonna use it this morning. It was working fine. I even used it 3 hours ago. It was working fine, but it was just this within this past last hour it would stop working. Okay, if the internet working, you can to the internet. Yes, I am coming to the internet working. And you pretty much just ask questions so you can minimize all these different scenarios about why it isn't working. Because it could be something as simple as it need a driver update. It could be something simple as the print spooler is a bit logged up, so you need to unlog it. You got to go in and unclear it out so you can for the laptop know exactly what it's trying to send and the printer understand what it's trying to send. It could be a multitude of things, but troubleshooting is the first step of figuring out a lot of problems. And a lot of that is just asking a lot of questions. I'm pretty sure you all have called 1-800 numbers when something wasn't working and they ask you a bunch of questions. Hey, is your PC on? Is it, it's not frozen, it's not stuck? Are you connected to the internet? Because Could you unhook it from the internet and you restart it? Could you power cycle your router? Could you do a bunch of things? The reason why they're asking you all these questions is because they're trying to minimize what the problem could be. Because if you just try to go in head first, you will have a very long day. But if you ask questions first about what the issue is and get down to the nitty gritty, you will be able to figure out a bit more faster what the issue is than you would if you just dive in head first. Because you could say like, hey, well, let's do this, and then you messed up something else. Now you got to fix that problem for somebody else, right? Because you couldn't, restart the printer, and now it's not printing for somebody else, and they were just fine, right? So that's why you ask questions so you can figure out what's going on. A lot of the times it could be driver issues. You may have to update the driver. You may need to roll back the driver. A bunch of things it could be. So definitely want to ask questions. You definitely want to troubleshoot whatever issue that you is, and this will be your main tool when you are doing IT help desk, IT technician work, is the troubleshooting process. Then you have your VPN. I'm pretty sure some of you know what the VPN is. Your VPN is your virtual private network. It's an extension of a private network of public resources using dedicated hardware or software to create extension and securely transmit data. So your VPN pretty much help mask your IP address, which is your internet protocol address, that every laptop, PC, phone, if it connects to the internet, it have an IP address and have a MAC address, and we'll get into that later on next week for terminology. But it helps protect you, right? Especially when you use public Wi-Fi, it helps protect you because you don't want to go on your bank account information, right? You want your bank information on public Wi-Fi. You don't want that. You're going to get hacked and they're going to take your money. So you want to use a VPN, which pretty much uses an IP address from overseas somewhere or even in the States that can be completely made up, just randomly generated. And it just masks your real IP address by using that so people can't get into your information. That's what a VPN. You all heard like Express VPN, NordVPN. I use VPN Unlimited. Myself, I use a VPN, but it also allows you to spoof a lot of these websites and even these streaming services, right? You heard of people using Netflix, VPN on Netflix because the Canadian Netflix is so much better, or the overseas Netflix have way more stuff, and they watch that by using VPN. So VPNs is definitely very helpful. Definitely would recommend you now during this time to definitely check out and look into about investing into a VPN. And then you have your WIN, which is your wide area network, which is a large network of information and data that is not tied to a single location. So unlike the LAN, which is like pretty much like an office building, hospital, this is wide and varied. So this allows you to, access information, but it's not to just one place. It could be multiple places where you're trying to access this information. And all this, by the way, works hand in hand with your VPN, right? For example, my sister, she works for in Indianapolis for an insurance company, and she was out of state and she needed access information that was in California, but she couldn't do that until she logged into a VPN first to protect herself, and then she can log into the stuff in California, download it, and then email it to someone that was in New York, right? So that happens a lot. Both of these usually work hand in hand to protect not only yourself, but the company and their information, their privileged information. So the next three would be pretty much about like security, and we're going to get deep into that. Not deep into it, but we're going to talk about that also in these next 6 weeks. But the first one is spoofing, which is when cyber criminals use deception to appear as another person or source of information. The second one is social engineering, which these two would be under, is the method of gaining trust of a user so that the attacker can acquire sensitive information that can be used to access data. And then lastly, of course, is phishing. Phishing attacks uses email, phones, or text to get someone to provide sensitive information such as password and credit card information. So these two, spoofing and phishing, are directly under the umbrella of social engineering. Social engineering works like this. Let's say I need a document. Let's say I'm some ICE genius and I need to get some information from HR, like a list or something like that. I don't work for them. I never worked for them, but I need this information and I know they're not just going to give it to me. So I need to get it under other means. How would you do that? One way you can do is social engineering, where you will call the place, make it seem like you just got hired, right? You found out that these people are hiring and you just got hired, so you can fake your way into a phone call, something like this. Hey, how you doing? I just got hired there. And I start next Monday. And I just want to know like what restaurants was near, because lunchtime I really want to eat, but I don't want to eat like pork or I don't want to eat meat. There's some vegetarian options over there. And then she would tell you all the restaurants that's over there. She may visit them herself, or a bunch of coworkers may go there, which would be perfect because you can go to that restaurant, just sit there, eat, have your laptop, just be in incognito mode, and you can get the information that you would need to enter the building, right? They may have an NFC card, you can copy it, a bunch of information that you can get right then and there. That will allow you to copy the NFC card, make a fake account. You'll be able to go in and go into the building, get the information that you need, and just walk out. That happens a lot. Actually, happen more often than not. So social engineering is a perfect tool for you in order to get information by devious means. Spoofing, same thing, because you're using spoofing within social engineering to appear as another person or source of information when you don't even work for that person at all, that company at all. But you have so much information that will be available to you on the internet, right? The company directory, all of that, which is insane, but it happens. And then phishing, of course, is probably one of the most common ways of deception, right? Pretty much it's people that make up fake websites, email accounts, all of that. I've seen this happen a lot. For example, I had a friend, she ordered some clothes, like $150 worth of clothes from this website. She ordered it, and like for a month or two, she didn't hear anything. She's like, what's going on? Then she finds out that it was a fake website. The website don't even exist no more. The email address he sent is gone. All of that. So, and how that happens is they make a website to just get your information. So they just want your phone number, they want your credit card information, the CVV number, the expiration date, all of it. And you would normally give that to them, but not knowing that it's not a real account, right? So a lot of old people get fake with that a lot, like we're paying like water bills, electricity bills, like a ComEd bill. But the things I would say to look out for is the email address, right? Most companies will have like a no reply at ComEd.com or no reply at Nicor.com, people gas, whatever. It would be no reply because it's just a mailbox to send out information, right? That's all that is. It's not, they don't have an inbox. It's literally just sends out information. So you may have a bill, it's going to send that out. That's all that is. Government agencies like Social Security, the IRS, they never send out emails to your personal account. They always go through something like a third party. So, for example, let's say you have like a letter with Social Security. They may send you a notification through your email saying, like, hey, check your Social Security account at ssa.gov to check out you have a notification. They may do that, but they would never just willingly send out information directly to your email address, right? Same thing with the IRS. They will mail you letters first, or if you signed up for it, you made your account, you can get online alerts to check out the digital version of those letters, but they will never just send out information directly to your email address. It's always like multiple steps you will have to go through to make sure you are using to protect yourself. So these are things you need to look out for. Just look at the email address. The wording can be looking weird. Look at the bottom of the email because it may have some unsubscribe or something like that. Protect yourself from phishing attacks. And then we have the last three, which is network administrator, IT project manager, and IT support specialist. So network administrators are the IT pros that support an organization internal service by installing, maintaining, and monitoring systems. So that is what I'm aspiring to be right now as a network administrator. Pretty much all they do are just watch the service. They make sure that the servers are staying updated, that they're security protected, and then you're just monitoring it. You're making sure that all the hard drives are working correctly. If you have to replace a hard drive because of they'll be put in RAID, all of that. That's pretty much what you do. All level 2 stuff. So server work. You may have to look at like the networks. So make sure all the switches are working correctly. Make sure that all the routers are working correctly. You may have to, run cord. Well, not yourself, but you may have to make sure to change the cord up there to a stronger cat so more information be pushed through. That's pretty much what you do. The IT project manager is someone who set the timeline for technical projects and keep the team on task and budget. So you are just the head of a team. Let's say your team have to finish this coding project that they've been working on for this, the back end coding for this website. So you're just making sure they stay on the timeline and keep them on task and on budget. They don't go over. If they can go, get it done in less amount of time, that'd be great. But you just want to make sure they don't go over the budget and they don't go over the days that have been given to them to complete the task. And of course, we have the IT support specialist or help desk technicians. That's what I am right now. They're individuals responsible for analyzing, troubleshooting, and evaluating technology issues. So you are the first line. You're a level one. You handle a bunch of the grunt work and also some more advanced things, like making sure the printer network is working correctly, make sure that the firewall is on or is off, make sure they don't have no viruses, no malware, things of that nature, making sure that you put a block in the browser. That's what you're doing. That's pretty much what you all are doing as a whole with IT help desk technicians. You're just level one. Like I said, just front line. Sometimes you're going to do some level two work. Some, like I was doing at Roseland Community Hospital, I was level one, but I was also doing level two stuff. So I was helping them with the server. I was helping them replace things. I was helping make sure that it was staying updated, all of that. But I was also in charge of a lot of level one stuff. So when I had to install PCs, I would set them up in the office, make sure Windows is installed, make sure they hook to the domain, make sure they have all the programs they needed. If they need a special program, because they work in a different department, make sure they have access to that program is working correctly, and then go install it, take the old one down, make sure everything working, and then do inventory. So you're doing a lot of the grunt work, but it's actually pretty fun. It's pretty enjoyable, especially when they start giving you level two work. It gets a bit crazy. So right now, before you end class, I'm going to play this video, which will be this. I'm going to play this video, and I already have it loaded up right here. So let's go ahead and play this, and then after that, we wrap up class, and I will say what we'll be doing next week.
We are living in a world where humans rely on inanimate objects. A combination of metal, rubber parts, and fuel can help you get from one place to a distant place without breaking a sweat. Pieces of plastic and metal put together the right way can make you communicate with someone who's miles away from you. And most importantly, information and data can now be stored and retrieved later on. And the world is in need of people who understand how this information and technology works. So what exactly is information technology? First and foremost, it must be understood that this is a very broad topic. But information technology is the use of computer systems, storages, networks and tangible devices, technological infrastructure, systems and processes to create, modify, transfer, store, multiply, and exchange all forms of electronic data. So what exactly is data? Data is every type of information from facts, statistics, numerical sequences, and patterns, which is analyzed, studied, compared, modified, stored, and overall used as a component in the overall information that the technology user needs. The value of information technology is that although people are capable of handling data using our brains, and even the old paper and pen processes, these processes are not as reliable, efficient, and effective as relying on information technology. A computer can process millions of pieces of data at a given time. Its storage or memory can hold and secure information without forgetting a single piece of data. So where is information technology applicable? From the general information above, information technology plays a significant role in business. Some examples of this would be customer handling, all the way from handling customer service, personal day-to-day communication, storing financial records, and all other human activities that deal with handling electronic data. Information technology is essential to the day-to-day operations of a business, and even more important when it comes to scaling your business to make more money. And this is why learning the skills of information technology is incredibly valuable whether you want to get a job or start your own business. Next, let's talk about hardware versus software. Before we can discuss examples of information technology, it's important that we talk about hardware and software. Hardware is tangible technology that you can actually touch when it comes to dealing with information technology, from personal computers, laptops, mobile phones, tablets, and everything else that is physical and is used for the purposes of IT. Software, on the other hand, is intangible, aka you can't touch it. So this would be things such as websites, computer programs, or systems and applications. And it's going to be broadly separated into two different groups, which is software systems and applications. Software systems are basic programs that are tasked to perform computer functions at its most basic level. An example of this would be an operating system for a phone, such as iOS or Android. Applications, on the other hand, also have a lot of examples, such as databases, email servers, transaction processing systems, process control systems, enterprise collaboration systems, and many more. Some examples of this would be Slack, Dropbox, HubSpot, Google Drive, and Microsoft Office. Next, let's talk about information technology as a career path. Information technology is very broad, but it is a great career path. If you are able to learn the skills of information technology with the constant rise of technology in this modernized world, it is safe to say that you will almost definitely have a job. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median annual wage for computer and information technology occupations is $97,000. That's over twice the median annual wage for all other applications, which is $45,000. And according to Glassdoor.com, an entry-level position as an IT help desk technician makes over $50,000 a year. So not only does information technology offer you a good salary, but being in IT keeps you updated with the latest in technology innovation. A few examples of fields related to information technology are IT management, computer systems analyst, web development, cybersecurity, cloud administration, and database administration. If you want to learn a way to get into information technology in a few months, click the free training, which I will put down in the description, as well as the pinned comment below. This free training is offered by a company called Course Careers, which I've mentioned before, which routinely
Yeah, sorry about that. But that's the end of the video for the most part. But yeah, we will get into that. But that video had a lot of information. As you see, you have a multitude of things that you can definitely do, right? If you want to do IT help destination, if you want to do be a data analyst, if you want to do coding, if you want to do engineering, you have the world of your oyster in IC, and it's something that I kind of push for doing this class because I want you all to learn another skill that is going to be very, very helpful in the future. And if you like it, I hope it sparks an idea for you to go further into the IT field. But that is the end of tonight's class. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can reach me at this email address right here, aramis.singleton@clickservices.nfp.org. And you can also check out our website at clickservices.org. And again, my name is Aramis Singleton. Next week, we'll pick it up with terminology part 2. Learn some more terminology, IT terminology words, and we will be learning more about PCs, like how do you build a PC, what is it, what all do you need when you're going into building your PC, especially specifically what you're looking for. And we will also learn about command prompt too. I know we were supposed to get to that today, but we will get to that next week about command prompt. So, but again, like any questions, aramis.singleton@clickservices.nfp.org, or if you are here in person, you can pull me over to the side before and after class, and I will help you out the best that I can. If you, Elijah, do you have any questions? Elijah? All right. Well, again, like I said, next week, terminology part 2. Learn how to build a PC, learn what do you need to build a PC, and some CMD command prompts, like what that is, and just the basic command prompts that you should just know off the back of your hand, like IP config and stuff like that. But until then, you all have a great night. I will see you on Friday for the streaming class, and I will see you next Tuesday for part 2 terminology. But until then, you all have a great night, and you all take care.